Alright, welcome to my UFC 321 full card breakdown. Luckily, YouTube got a bit more consistent about the stream working, so I think it is working today. Let me know if you guys can hear me, please. Hey, JDM. Can you hear me? Great. Okay, nice. I think the delay should also be a bit down today, so hopefully that works a little better. Maybe to CW. Alright, so we'll do the usual thing, 10-ish to 15 minutes of questions, then into the full card breakdown, and then we'll talk about whatever after. I also have a bit of an update about the coaching application I'm making, but we'll get to that after some random questions that people have time to get in here. I hate seeing RDR lose. He was supposed to be the Hamzat killer. Yeah, unfortunately, I know a lot of people were fans of RDR, so I do feel bad for those who are, but I just don't think he was ever the person who people thought he was. Thoughts on John calling out Max? How do you see it going? I think Max finishes him in the third. So, John's definitely not going to get the fight, so in all honesty, it doesn't really matter. But if we were to assume the fight was going to happen for some reason, it would honestly depend purely on what John's game plan was. Because if he approaches it like the Lopez fight, where he's trying to get a knockout at all costs, that's not going to go well for him. But if he approaches the fight like, oh, I just want to take 3 rounds and win a decision, that definitely is possible. I actually might slightly favor John there. Can Steve Erceg be considered the flyweight GOAT since he beat Pantoja and Moreno? There's an argument for he beat Pantoja, but I don't really think there's an argument for Moreno. I didn't think the Moreno fight was competitive, and I mean, it worked out because I like Moreno, but I would have liked to see more out of Erceg because that fight was just anticlimactic. We like the idea of RDR, which was different from the real thing. Yeah, exactly. I can't believe the press asked about how Gane feels about being French. It's really riveting stuff. Did they actually do that? I straight up stopped watching press conferences because they're just painful at this point. In hindsight, I think Fluffy would be an easier matchup for RDR. Fluffy has a vulnerability to the body, and RDR has good knees to the body. It's possible. I was saying when that matchup was made that if RDR is going to win, it is going to have to come from the knees. But I think knowing that that's all that RDR had to offer for Fluffy, he would have been able to game plan around it. JDM is what we thought Leon was. Kind of, except he's much more aggressive. Like, even Leon, pre-champion Leon, was not exactly keen on finishing fights. JDM has always been keen on finishing fights, so. RDR no-gas goofball fight style, yeah. Ikram versus Joe Pyfer, who wins? Probably Pyfer, because Ikram's striking defense is just not there, and his chin is not great either. What's your early prediction for JDM Islam? So I am still leaning JDM, but I'm really not confident. Enjoyed your vid on wrestling. Great insights as per usual. Thank you. Who are you backing in Wellmaker versus Haddon? I need to look at the tape more on that, because I do think that people are underestimating Haddon, just assuming that Wellmaker is going to walk through him. Because I have not seen a Haddon fight in a while, but if I remember correctly, his boxing is pretty clean. Does Leon have a chance against Pratas? Again, Leon's one of those people who can always win if he actually fights in the correct manner, but he just doesn't. So I'm not going to say he doesn't have a chance by any means, but I don't see him winning just because he's probably not going to fight in the correct manner. How do you see John Silva doing against the top 5 lightweights, including Islam? So his issue from bottom was a little bit concerning, but to be fair, he started in a very bad position because he gave up mounts like immediately. So if he doesn't do that and actually fights a bit more intelligently, I think he can take most of them out. I think Topuria, of course, is going to be very difficult for him because Topuria is a lot more disciplined, even if John's a lot more creative. Islam may be tough in the sense that Islam's going to just fight super safe, which might frustrate John and might go on his like whole trying to kill Lopez in round 2 thing. So a lot of it really depends on how John controls his mental, in all honesty. I heard Willmaker in an interview is not a fan of the grappling. Fair. I mean, I don't think it's necessarily going to matter in a hat-on fight, unless I'm forgetting something, but it could definitely matter later on. John Silva versus Petr Yan at 145, who wins? I'm going to say John Silva. I think Petr Yan, the biggest problem is he has 0 finishing threat at this point. Like, he finished an old Uriah Faber, and like that was pretty much it. Missed it before, but what was your prediction for Islam versus JDM? I'm leaning JDM. Bro, I feel you on wanting to pick Gane because Tom is overrated, like based on people saying he's unbeatable. His fight IQ is like 50-50. Sometimes he says brain dead things, sometimes he sounds smart. Yeah, it's just one of those fights where I don't have a high opinion of either, but Aspinall is definitely better. What made you think John Silva could beat Ilya? So John, when he's using his head, does have high enough fight IQ to punish a lot of Ilya's tendencies. So, for example, when Ilya is really open when he's loading up for the overhand, and right after he throws the overhand, that's a moment that I think John is capable of punishing. So I still do think John would definitely have a chance against Ilya. It's just maybe can't favor him right now, given what we saw of his lack of discipline, let's say, in his last fight. If Willmaker really needs to work on his grappling, though, that's definitely going to be a problem, like, one fight after the next one. Given his age also, there's a lot of limiting factors in Willmaker's career. So if he has a good manager, they'll probably try to just get pure striking matchups for a while, which is possible, but we'll see how it goes. No matter how you think Tom wins, we just know the UFC will book Gane versus Waldo in Paris. Very possible. John Ego took over because he lost the first round. I don't think it was necessarily ego. I think the moment got to him and that he just really wanted to produce a highlight. And he saw like, oh, I'm completely outclassing this guy on the feet. And he just got way too comfortable with that. Hayden versus Henry. I'm going to lean Talbot. What really bothers me about Talbot is his striking defense. Like, he just doesn't have any. But I think that fighting someone like Cejudo, who's a bit older, and Talbot will probably be a little more disciplined knowing he's taking the step up, he can probably get it done. Do you think if Ilya and John fought, do you think John will come out southpaw to throw Ilya off? It's very possible. I couldn't say for sure, but it's very possible. What things has Tom said or done that picture him as a low IQ fight IQ, though? I'm not sure specifically what he was referring to, but at least for me, when he just charged in against Blades and just got caught by the check hook and stumbled into him because of that, that was like, what are you doing? You're the better striker. You don't need to just charge at him and try to kill him immediately. Like, if Blades was a little bit more technical a boxer, he would have knocked out Aspinall there. Taporia versus Umar. Taporia flatlines him in 1. Thoughts on the Canada card? Weird to me because a lot of underdog wins. I was not a fan of the Canada card. I know there was some entertainment, but all the fouls just were really annoying me. I mean, you guys saw my stuff on the whole Dober situation. That just really pissed me off. If Tom is serious about vacating when Delia gets a shot, then what should the UFC do so that Tom doesn't vacate? I mean, just give Delia a fight that he's not going to win, and there's plenty of the fights that he's not going to win. Give him someone like Mario Pinto, maybe, would probably be someone who could probably beat him, who's a prospect. Maybe even, what's his name? The guy who got knocked out by Derek Lewis. That wouldn't be a bad fight. Taliesin Teixeira, yeah. It wouldn't be a bad fight for him either. So I'm assuming they're just going to give Delia a fight that he is not going to win. Maybe they'll give him one more that he's going to win to get him a little bit of hype and then just get him knocked out. Andrei Arlovsky fight was not a good look. Yeah, that was not good either. He's beating Gane, though, yeah, 100%. Or not 100%, but close. What would Tom do to make you change your mind about him being good or elite? I mean, he has to have a lot more nuanced setup and not just be throwing the same thing on repeat, because my massive criticism towards Aspinall rather, is that he just throws the 1-2 or a double same side attack. By a double same side attack, I mean he'll throw like knee into elbow same side, or like kick into punch same side, stuff like that. It throws heavyweights off a little bit, but it's very basic stuff still. I'm assuming you think Tom is good, but not some unbeatable god. His chin is up there on the silver platter. He's okay. I mean, I think there's a lot of historical heavyweights that would have beaten him, though. It's weird Tom looks so skittish versus Blades, watching the Blades fight compared to the Volkov fight as night and day. What are your thoughts? Yeah, I'm not 100% sure what it is. I did not like how he looked against Blades. D'Elia is really good, and he does have similar speed to Aspinall, but maybe an Almeida or Blades could test the grappling. D'Elia is really good in round 1. If you take him out of round 1, your chance of beating him skyrockets. You see Patchy Mix popped. Apparently that got reversed, so that was kind of a false flag. I'm going to disagree with you on the Dober situation. Parpalik had an extra 2 minutes for recovery and chose to continue instead of using those extra 2 minutes. Dober just pressured hard and forced the KO. Parpalik, first of all, he didn't have an extra 2 minutes. He had about an extra 40 to 50 seconds, if I remember correctly. And it may have just come to the point where he decided, okay, it's not going to get any better, so if I'm going to have to continue, I'm going to have to continue now. Sometimes the fighter's like, okay, I don't want to let him recover more, and if I don't feel like this is going to change in 50 seconds, I might as well go. So it's not like he was like, oh, I'm fine. It's just like, no, he was like, it's probably not going to get any better, so I have to go. Kane versus Tom. I'd pick Tom there. I'm not the highest on Kane in general. Prime Miocic is a nightmare for Tom. Yeah, exactly. Prime Stipe, I think, would have like knocked out Tom within 2 minutes. Is weed for Patchy? Yeah. Yeah, he popped for weed, and then they kind of reversed it because apparently they misread the number, so it was like 10 times lower than they thought it was. Is there a way to get more finishes? I feel like Bilal, I'm a 2-0 amateur fighter. I'm more of a wrestler, kickboxer, but I feel like every time to get a finish, it just doesn't happen. You don't want to look for the finish, you just want to look for consistently getting ahead of your opponent, and then the finish will appear. So if you're trying to set up strikes and you're not rushing them, so if you're just throwing with full power looking for the knockout, they're going to be able to read it and evade it easily. So even if you're winning on points, they'll be able to stay somewhat safe. But if you're being more nuanced about it, making them overextend, using feints to set up big shots, then you'll probably be able to get it more easily. I meant Aleksandar Topuria for the Umar fight. Oh, right now I'd probably favor Umar. The France commission said he popped, but the American commission said he didn't. Very odd. Yeah, it was just a misinterpretation of a number, it seemed. Who you got, Amir Khan or Topuria? I really don't know. I feel like Amir Khan is the much better fighter, but Topuria game planning is hard to bet against. So right now, I think I'm leaning towards Bekzat, but I'm not 100% sure. Aspinall fought like if he was, as if he was off the couch against Blades. It's so random, like he didn't game plan, just spawn there. Yeah, pretty much, felt like it. DC or Tom? I'm going to take Tom there. I actually don't think DC would have been that difficult to match up for him. Thoughts on Cheetah Vera versus Patchy Mix? I mean, Cheetah Vera would still win that. I mean, Patchy Mix is not ranked quality in the UFC, so even though Cheetah was vastly overrated for a while, he would still destroy Patchy. I know you're a fight analyst, so you have to critique Tom, but that's my point. I don't want to accept his mistakes. Fair enough. Do you think Umar can beat Merab in a rematch? No, I don't think a rematch will be competitive. I think something that a lot of people are forgetting is that Merab took that with basically like the worst circumstances possible in the first fight. He had like multiple infections, his leg was a mess, it was ridiculous. So, like, we saw Merab gas out for pretty much the first time. Like, Merab in round 5, even though he was showboating, didn't have the same level of energy he normally would. So we get a healthy Merab, or a healthier Merab against Umar, especially with Merab's better finishing power now, and I think it's going to be very one-sided. Steve Garcia or David Onama? Should be very easy for Garcia, in my opinion. Thoughts on John Pork? He's going to be very overrated and then lose as a massive favorite, in my opinion. That style of like Muay Thai striking looks very cool, but it doesn't work pragmatically because the defense is atrocious. I'm wondering if Amir Khan's wrestling has improved, considering he dropped Umar but got controlled for the rest of the fight and dominated. I would assume they've focused on it a lot, but yeah, we'll have to see. I really want to see Gane win just to see his reaction, fair enough. Tito would probably bring it to a close decision. He has absolutely no urgency. That is very possible. Patchy Mix was so cheeks, man. I absolutely couldn't believe how cheeks is fair. You think Merab can finish Umar in the rematch? Yeah, I think Merab would probably get a 4th or 5th round finish. A little late to ask this, but what are your thoughts on Usman Nurmagomedov's prospects within the UFC, the lightweight top 15? Who's the best opponent he could theoretically beat? I don't know if he's even getting ranked in UFC, in all honesty. Maybe he could beat someone like... I feel like, what's his name? Grant Dawson would probably be a good matchup for him, in all honesty. So maybe there's a few like random guys who he could beat, but I don't think he would get very far. How do you feel about Michael Oliveira from week 10 of Dana White's Contender Series? So Oliveira's biggest problem is that his defense is really predictable and not great. He kind of just leans out of the way of stuff. So if you throw a longer combo at him, he tends to get tagged. He has solid power and solid fundamentals, so if he can fix that, he'll go far. But it's been a glaring issue in a lot of his fights. Does RDR win if he takes more time between fights? No, he was just outclassed skill-wise. And like his cardio's never been good. Is Charles versus Max... Like, I feel like people are forgetting this. RDR got reversed by GM3 multiple times. Like, RDR is just not that guy. If Charles versus Max... Is Charles versus Max more interesting after his Gamrot performance? I think he looked great against a phenomenal wrestler. The biggest problem is still his striking defense. Like, I know Gamrot kind of has pillow hands, but Charles was just getting hit by everything. So hopefully giving Charles the benefit of the doubt, he was just doing that because he knew he could against Gamrot. But if he does that against Max, it's not going to go well. I would absolutely love to see you collab with MMA Shay at some point on a stream or something. I'm down for that. In all seriousness, you said previously you're not too highly thinking of Kane or Fedor or some historical heavyweights you really respect / think would do well today. I think that even though I don't have that high opinion of Kane, I still think he would do relatively well today. Stipe would still be champion today, in my opinion, in his prime. Let's see who else. Even, say, Junior Dos Santos, in his prime, would still do pretty well today. There's probably a few others I'm forgetting about. Even, like, Verdum, right? Would probably do pretty well. Also, why is Virna being so overlooked? It makes no sense. We'll get to that. Did you see Bilal coping, saying that he wanted to stand and box with JDM? Yeah, no, Bilal is just... Bilal, I don't even know what to say about him. Chandler or Usman? I'd probably go Usman at this point in time. Alright, let's get into the breakdown since it's been around 18 minutes, so we went a little further along than I wanted to, actually. Where is my tab? Okay, here we go. So starting out with Amorim versus Mizuki. So Amorim's basically a pure grappler. She's kind of like Mackenzie Dern, except with better takedowns and ground and pound, with all honesty. Her stand-up is not atrocious. She has some power. It's not the most technical, but she's smart in the fact that she's not going to go for anything too complicated. She'll stay pretty safe on the feet and just use that to set up the takedown. So we're not going to have an instance with her where she just doesn't shoot for some reason, like some fighters decide not to. So once Amorim's on the ground, she will go for pretty much anything if she feels like she has the proper setup. So she will go to the side for the armbar, rear naked choke, of course. She does like to get to the back, but she will transfer back on top and go for the ground and pound if she doesn't feel like the submission is there. Mizuki is a bit underrated. She's not nearly as bad as the odds make her seem, in my opinion. She has very good footwork, especially for WMMA. In all honesty, she may have the best footwork in WMMA in the UFC right now. Her boxing is reasonable. Her head movement isn't as good as her footwork by any means, so sometimes she does get hit, but her boxing is just very clean, so it doesn't really matter in most cases. She has a reasonable chin as well, so no one's really just beating her all in the feet, in all honesty. Her takedown defense is pretty solid. I believe it's around 85% right now, which is what makes the matchup a bit interesting, because Amorim probably won't have the same ease with takedowns as she has against her previous opponents. The biggest problem with Mizuki in the matchup is how she handles the wrestling. She likes to counter wrestle a lot. So if someone shoots on her, she'll try to either throw them or trip them or something like that. And sometimes in the process, because she is kind of going 50-50 in that sense, she will end up getting taken down instead. Also against Amorim, even if Mizuki does get her down, I don't think that's a great idea. Realistically, you just want to stuff the takedown and get back to range. So I am going to go Amorim sub, but I could see her failing a few takedowns or even getting taken down herself and having to find something from that situation. And I'm not as wildly confident as a lot of people are here, because despite the fact that Mizuki has been out for a while, she is very good. Again, like Mizuki fought Virna Jandiroba in Invicta a while ago, and Mizuki technically lost by split decision, but I thought that was kind of a robbery. Mizuki should have gotten that. So just for context of how good she is. Azamat Maksum versus Mitch Raposo. So with Maksum's debut, it seemed like he wasn't going to go that far in the UFC because he had a very difficult fight against a fighter who, I'm blanking on his name, but he's someone who got cut right after and was never that high ranked. Maksum's cardio was never spectacular, even though he has finishing ability, especially in his first fight. It seemed like, okay, once you get out of the first round, you're kind of safe against him. We saw that further along in the Charles Johnson fight when he dropped Johnson, almost submitted him in round 1, but then once Johnson survived that, after that, like, Maksum faded dramatically and Johnson picked up rounds 2 and 3. However, in the Tagir fight, even though he did take like a year and a half off, or maybe 2 years before that, it did seem like his cardio was dramatically improved. It's hard to say just off of one fight, but his trajectory does seem solid. On the feet, he has a lot of power. He'll look for longer combos. He's going to try to bait your movement out with like a 1-2 and then catch you at the hook as you dip under or like come in or something like that. On the ground, he really likes to go for the darce. If not, he will go for the back. His wrestling is definitely underrated because he pretty handedly out-wrestled Tagir. So, especially in this matchup, I am expecting him to go to that. Mitch Raposo has pretty clean boxing, but just seems to be very hesitant to really let his hands go. Like, he'll land a combo, but then instead of just like pushing forwards and throwing more and pushing in his advantage, he'll just back off and then kind of reset, circle out, and then the whole thing will start again. So because he refuses to commit to actually trying to either finish his opponent or do more damage, he ends up just falling behind on volume and such. He has reasonable takedowns, but once he gets to the ground, he has absolutely nothing. Like, he has no ability to control you, work for a submission, ground and pound, anything. This is probably going to be a very one-sided fight. As we see by the odds here, like, Maksum is minus 380 for a reason. I'm kind of surprised he's not like minus 600, because even if he fades, I can't see him not picking up 2 rounds here. And I think, in all honesty, he's probably going to get Raposo to the ground and sub him, whether it's via knockdown or via takedowns. Either way, he should be able to get Raposo down, and I think Raposo is going to have a hard time, I should say, with the darce, or maybe even just the rear naked choke. Why is Mitch still in the UFC? What do they see? I think they're just trying to give Maksum an easy win here, in all honesty. I think they realized after the Sumadarji fight, like, okay, let's just give Raposo to someone we want to build and then cut him right after. So it's unfortunate for him, but I think he's just being used as cannon fodder here. Mitch's last 2 fights should have been unanimous. Yeah, I agree. I don't know how they were split. It's like, with the Lima fight, I was joking that the judges scored the fight like I would. Like, they took a point for every penalty from Lima. I think he landed like 3 eye pokes. It felt like one judge just like took away 3 points based on that. Alright, so Hamdi Abdelwahab versus Chris Barnett. So Hamdi is, of course, an Olympic wrestler, and hypothetically should be out-wrestling the entire division because of that, except he shoots like 1 takedown per fight, and even if he gets it, just decides to not shoot again. I have no idea what goes through his head, but it is what it is, I guess. On the feet, Hamdi is relatively technical. Like, he mainly just focuses on his straight and his calf kick. The biggest problem is that after round 1, his volume does definitely fall off significantly, and he just has 0 dog in him whatsoever. Like, if he gets tagged at all, he will just stop throwing, back up, and just be kind of useless in there. I don't even know how to better put that. So even though on paper he's a technically very good fighter, it's just not what we end up seeing in the cage. Even though his country says Egypt, apparently he does live and train in New York, so I'm surprised he doesn't get better training in New York, but that is what it is. Chris Barnett is like a Taekwondo heavyweight, as crazy as it sounds. His boxing is not spectacular. It leaves a lot to be desired. All he's doing is basically just throwing hooks and spamming, maybe 1-2s if you're lucky. But with his legs, he actually throws reasonable calf kicks, spinning kicks, kicks to the head, etc. So because of that, he always has the weird potential to pull out a highlight. I am a little bit surprised that Hamdi is minus 425 here, but Barnett is super old, did like destroy his knee by jumping in his last fight, and yeah, I mean, none of it was a good look. So Hamdi will probably get the TKO here. I'm going to say he gets the TKO in round 1, but if this goes past round 1 and then Hamdi gets tagged a few times, he might just quit. Like, heavyweight fights are strange, and Hamdi makes it stranger by just having no grit whatsoever. Chris has a sneaky Superman punch. Fair. Yeah, he's good at the flashy stuff. He's just not good at the fundamental boxing, to say the least. Could Hamdi's burger shop factor into considering Barnett's obvious lack of cheeseburgers could bribe him? Fair. Chris Barnett and Brandon Royval are the same height. Yeah, it's wild. I don't like. Barnett just does not take his career seriously. The crazy thing is if Barnett was fully locked in on his career and he cut down to light heavyweight, put on some muscle, he might do well there. Because again, his speed is ridiculous for a heavyweight when he actually throws his kicks. But yeah, at heavyweight, having to cut to heavyweight at 5'9" is something else. Okay, this is the first very interesting matchup on the card, in my opinion. So, Nathaniel Wood started at bantamweight, I believe, in the UFC, eventually moved up to featherweight because the weight cut was too much, which was interesting because he is more the size of a bantamweight, in all honesty. But he does pack a lot of muscle on him, so it kind of does make sense. Despite that, his power is weird. Like, he'll drop people a lot, but then he just has no way to find the finish. I don't know if he just has bad instincts on the ground or whatever the deal is, but his follow-up is just not spectacular. So you'll see in his career, he has a lot of knockdowns and very few finishes. He's basically a technical boxer. He will throw the calf kick as well, but mainly he's looking to get in the pocket and use his speed to just tag you as much as possible. He does basically try to dip mid-combo to reset. So when he dropped Charrier, he basically threw, I believe it was a 1-2, then dipped under Charrier's hook, and then threw his own hook in return or something like that. So he does have sophisticated boxing in that sense, and his pure speed makes him very difficult for a lot of people at this weight class to deal with. He does have the wrestling backup as well. He tends to use it as a backup, though, and doesn't really go to it automatically. But if things are going wrong for him, or he does get hurt, he will definitely shoot. Delgado is one of these, like, new school pure aggression fighters. He is dangerous everywhere. He is a very powerful striker. On the ground, he has submissions as well. I think he has multiple wins via Darce. We haven't really seen him have to fight off of his back, so that is a question. He did get up relatively easily against Conor Matthews, but that was Conor Matthews, who is no longer in the UFC for a reason, so I don't know if that says too much. On the feet, Delgado's kind of going to try to snipe from range with like a 1-2 and like high kicks and such, but then once you get into range, he'll kind of spam hooks in the pocket. That is the most concerning point of weakness for Delgado, in my opinion, because with his reach, especially for this weight class, I don't know why you would spam hooks in the pocket anytime. Yes, he does hit hard, he can hurt people with it, and I wouldn't be shocked if he put someone out with it, but going like 50-50 on hook spams when you're usually the more technical striker and you have more power is just very strange to me. In this specific matchup, a lot of people are going with Wood because he's a lot more experienced, and I understand that. I think specifically this matchup is going to be difficult for Wood, though, given how like important it is for him to be able to duck. Because dipping is part of most of his boxing combos, whether he's throwing more after it or just exiting after, he is always dipping. And Delgado loves to get his opponents to dip and just blast the knee up the middle. His Contender Series fight ended with a knee up the middle. His most recent fight against Haider Emil ended with a knee up the middle. So I think the same is honestly probably going to happen here. Because if he blitzes forwards, Wood is probably going to dip under and then try to come over and rip with the combo. And Delgado's probably just going to time that, throw a knee up the middle, and knock him out. I could see a sub here also, if Delgado is able to drop him and then Wood is not fully out, because Wood is definitely has a lot of willpower, and his durability is reasonable. So I could see him surviving the knockdown, even if it is a bad knee. But I am going to have to pick Delgado here, even though I'm not wildly confident, because I do think Wood is underrated. So I'm going to say Delgado by first round TKO via the knee. Wood has a high guard, and I feel like Delgado could capitalize on that and get a knockdown by throwing a knee between the guard. Yeah, exactly. This fight makes Wood go back to 135. I don't think he can make 135 at this point, but valid. I like Nathaniel Wood's technicality, but I believe Delgado is too lethal for him. He's been dropped a lot. Yeah, that is true. If Delgado is able to take out Wood in round one in spectacular fashion, we're definitely looking at a contender. So I would like to see him get a shot at the rankings if he is able to do that. Do you speak any other languages? Not fluently by any means. I can understand a little of a few languages, but not like at a point at which I would be speaking it. Ulberg or Aspinall? I'd probably take Ulberg. All right, Walter Walker versus Louis Sutherland. So Walker is, of course, unlike Johnny, is pretty much a pure wrestler. He has power on the feet, but he doesn't really use it. He's always just going to shoot instantly or even roll for a heel hook, as he's done multiple times now. On the feet, it's hard to say what he's going to fight like because we haven't seen much time with him on the feet. It seems like he's just going to charge forwards, though, just blast power, hoping to raise your guard, and then shoot from there automatically. The concerning thing is when he did it against, what's his name, Kennedy Nzechukwu, or however you say his last name, he basically just lowered his head and charged at him, which would make me concerned against a heavyweight who has like some countering ability because his chin was just right there to be taken. But to be fair, because he hits hard, I could see heavyweights kind of panicking, especially because they aren't usually the best at countering anyways. Louis Sutherland, on the other hand, is more of a striker, even though he does wrestle sometimes. He is pretty technical with his kicks, surprisingly. He throws a lot of calf kicks, he will bring it up a little bit later, and he is okay with his jab. When he gets on the inside, though, it is mainly hook spam, and then maybe hook spam to a takedown at times. Walter Walker is a massive favorite for a reason here. He should be able to take down Sutherland and get the submission. I don't know if it's going to be a heel hook like it's been in the last few fights, but there's nothing about Sutherland that makes me think that he's going to be able to defend Walker's ground game at all. So we're going to say Walker by first round submission. I'll say heel hook for the hell of it because he might go for it, but it could easily be an arm triangle instead. Oh yeah, the other thing about Sutherland, good points about someone saying he's out of shape, is that on the regional scene, very high chance he was like heavily juiced because he looked completely different on the regional scene, and even then he was kind of mid. So especially now with this physique, I expect him to be much worse. All right, Ludovic Klein versus Martusz Rebecki. I'm always confused how to say Rebecki's last name. Hopefully I'm saying it right, because this is just how I've been saying it for a while. But Ludovic Klein is a kickboxer who started incorporating a lot of wrestling into his game, surprisingly. He does seem to have a slight preference for counter-striking, so he's very comfortable with letting his opponent go first and then just responding. He's a lot faster than a lot of people at this weight class, partially because he came up from featherweight, so he definitely uses the speed to his advantage. He is very technical, does everything right, doesn't have crazy power though. He does have enough power to hurt people, but he's not usually putting people out. If you do get hurt, he will look to push you against the cage and look for head kicks and stuff like that. Pretty much anything that you could imagine someone throwing on the feet, he will throw, except usually doesn't really throw spinning stuff, but just a technical kickboxer. In terms of the wrestling, he initially was just doing it to purely mix things up. Over time, it seems to become a more and more important part of his game, because he... Even in the Roosevelt-Roberts fight, for example, Roberts is someone I think a lot of us expected him to just absolutely run through, but he decided to take a wrestling-heavy approach and even lost around there, which wasn't the best look. On the other side, Rebecki is more of a wrestler than a striker, but on the feet, he will throw a lot of jabs and then load up with like the overhand and inside calf kicks usually. He is a southpaw, so he will blast the inside calf kick a lot more than people are usually used to. That did get him the win against Rajdabov, because Rajdabov just didn't defend a single calf kick and eventually was just completely compromised from it. And the biggest problem with Rebecki is that his fight IQ is questionable. I actually thought that he beat Duncan, but the problem is that he left it very close when all he needed to do was just continue to jab and calf kick throughout like all of round 2 and 3. But he ended up getting into more of a war than he needed to, and he ended up getting bloody, which looked bad to the judges, and that caused the decision to go Duncan's way, most likely. I don't think Rebecki is going to be able to take Klein down. And even if he does get him down, I don't think he's really going to be able to hold him down. Because, yes, while Klein's takedown defense did not look amazing against Gamrot, that was Gamrot, and Gamrot's going to get pretty much anyone down. And even then, Klein did stuff some of the takedowns and did show the ability to get back to the feet a few times. So I am surprised that the odds on this fight are so close. I think Klein is probably going to take a pretty clear decision here. Probably 29-28 because he likes making fights closer than they need to be. And I don't think he's going to have enough finishing ability to do anything dramatic here, but I do heavily favor him. Rebecki is how they pronounce it on the booth. Interesting, okay. Rebecki isn't taking a ton of damage. Do you think Klein will break his chin? It's possible, but I don't think Klein's going to be aggressive enough to do so. I wouldn't be shocked, but it's not my prediction. Rebecki coming back so soon as well. Yeah, he should have taken like at least 6 months off, probably more. First time Klein has the hairline advantage, true. Doesn't know why Gamrot had to fight Klein. Yeah, that was weird. Rebecki's last fight was awesome. It was fun, yeah. I hope Rebecki wins. He is such a fun fighter, but man, that damage is crazy. Yeah, Rebecki is always in a war. It's just, at a certain point, his mind shuts off and he just starts brawling. It kind of worked against Oralbai, because Oralbai isn't as technical on the feet as some of these other guys are, and his danger is more so in the wrestling. But against Klein, I don't think that brawling style is going to be very effective. That's kind of what Mason Jones tried to do against Klein, and that's why Klein was able to beat him so easily, in my opinion. Alright, Ikram Aliskerov versus Jin Park. So I'm going to start on the Park side, actually. Park is a very heavy pressure fighter. He's going to keep the jab in your face, try to back you up, then maybe just keep throwing there or work for a takedown and so on. He doesn't have the most danger in a single strike, especially because most of the strikes he throws are jabs, but he can just wear on people to the point that they effectively quit. On the ground, he is just going to be suffocating, just going to be looking to slowly advance every position, look for ground and pound, and so on. Usually not the biggest submission threat, even though he does have a few submissions on his record, but it's just always a slow suffocation of his opponent. On the other side with Ikram Aliskerov, the first thing I'm going to say is that his striking defense is atrocious. Like, I think he's the only fighter let's look at his striking defense right now. I don't say this incorrectly. Okay, he got up to 41%. I was going to say he's the only fighter I could think of below 40%, but that's not the case anymore, apparently. Before the Whitaker fight, I think he had 36% striking defense. I think his striking defense increased a bit against Muniz. So Aliskerov, as you can see, is just not defensively responsible at all. His chin also is not spectacular, which we did see in the Whitaker fight, and previously to that in his other loss against Chimaev. He just gets hurt by pretty much anything that connects clean. Luckily for him, Park doesn't have the most power, so I don't think that Aliskerov's at the greatest danger of being finished here. Aliskerov will take a bunch of strikes and then kind of just use that to explode in and try to finish you. His 1-2 combo is pretty quick. He will throw hooks if he gets into the pocket. It's nothing crazy technical, but he is very fast and powerful, which is sometimes enough at middleweight, because until you get into like the rankings at middleweight, it's not the highest level competition. On the ground, he is going to usually look for submissions. He's not as much a ground and pound guy, even though he does land some. His takedown defense is effectively perfect. So if Park is going to try to wrestle here, I don't think that's going to go well for him. Park definitely should just try to jab him to oblivion, essentially. But the problem is that it takes one for Ikram here, and it's going to take a lot for Park here. So as I've talked about in previous weeks, in fights where one fighter has to fight perfect and the other fighter doesn't, usually I'm going to favor the fighter who doesn't have to fight perfectly. The other problem for Park is that we have seen him getting hurt more and more often now. Against Tavares, he got hurt very early and very badly, which is not a good look because Tavares has pillow hands. Then the fight after that against, I'm blanking on his name, Nurdiev. He did get hurt very badly. Then Nurdiev just, for absolutely no reason, decided to knee a grounded opponent, and then Park was able to take the 5 minutes to recover and take over, get the decision from there. So I'm going to say Ikram wins this by first round TKO. And I am actually surprised a lot of people are picking Park. Crazy how Park fought Shavkat. Yeah, that is crazy. Ikram defended all of Hamzat's takedowns, which is crazy, yeah. Iron Turtle for the win. Ikram has nothing. I'm coping fair. That's women's MMA stats. Yikes. Yeah, fair. Okay, so before we go on to the main card, I wanted to give the quick update about my coaching application like I was talking about. So I was supposed to have a meeting with a developer who would be able to hopefully help me finish the rest of the application and get it into like commercial state, so to speak. Problem is that developer canceled 2 meetings, and once a developer cancels a second meeting, I'm kind of like hesitant to work with them because I think that says a lot about their reliability in general. So I'm probably going to have to look for a separate team now, which is going to take a while, but I'm working on it. So I'll update you guys once I know who I'm working with, or even if there's prospects by next week. But yeah, unfortunately, I kind of wasted a lot of time trying to get the meeting with this first guy. Park is a fan favorite, but Ikram is winning nonetheless. Yeah. What does RDR do against Ikram, Piper, Robocop, and Adaba? He probably loses to all of them. Alright, Nasrat Haqparast versus Quinlan Salkilld. So, starting with Haqparast, his main strength is his left hands. In some ways, he's a McGregor-like striker, right? He's going to just slow pressure, prod at you, and then try to unleash with the left hand as soon as he finds an opening. His striking is very clean and fundamental. His biggest problem is when his opponent is durable and is able to push a dogfight on him, because in that case, he just kind of gets overwhelmed and the clean striking becomes not as thought out, let's say, and he definitely can have problems with pressure. So against, say, like Bobby Green, even though Bobby Green isn't durable, Bobby Green kind of just made it dirty and overwhelmed him with pressure. Hooker was just the better fighter at the time, so there was no real shame in losing that one. But overall, Haqparast is really solid. His takedown defense is also spectacular. Like, very few people have taken him down in the last few years, and even when he does get taken down, he gets up basically instantly. So that's going to be a big problem for Salkilld in this fight, because Salkilld is a high-pressure striker who's going to throw a lot of kicks out and then look to wrestle. Now, Salkild's biggest problem, somewhat similar to Ikram, is that his striking defense just doesn't really exist. Like, Salkilld is going to do his best to overwhelm you with offense while eating everything you throw at him. I believe he has a negative striking defense. Let me check. Yeah, he's 45% striking defense, rather, which is not great, especially at this weight class. He does have very good striking accuracy, which does definitely indicate that his pressure works a lot of the time. But if you're taking a shot to give a shot against someone like Nasrat, that's going to be a problem, in my opinion, because Nasrat definitely has the power advantage here. Now, granted, as I was saying, that Nasrat has problems with pressure. There is a world in which Salkilld is able to overwhelm him with pressure here. The reason why I'm leaning towards that not happening is because Salkilld is so reliant on being able to wrestle to continuous pressure, and against Haqparast, I just don't see the takedown being available. Like, Haqparast is going to have the most crazy sprawls of anyone Salkilld has fought. So, I'm surprised people think this is so close. I think this should be a very dominant fight for Nasrat. I think he can probably get a round 2 finish, and if not, he'll probably take a dominant decision. The other thing we saw out of Salkilld is that he faded very badly against Yanal. And Yanal is not necessarily the fighter that you want to be gassing that badly against. So to lose round 3 against Yanal very badly as a massive favorite, I don't see him doing well with the step up here. I feel like this is one of these fighters where people like the idea of the fighter without actually looking at who the fighter is. So yeah, I'm going to say Nasrat second round TKO via left straight. Does Ikram's defense scare you? Yeah, for sure. Salkilld looked like RDR in that third round against Yanal. Nasrat has an underrated gas tank. Yes, that is true as well. Yeah, it shouldn't be that close. Yeah, I think that Nasrat should be at least like minus 250. I'm very surprised that it's this close. I think Salkilld is overhyped basically because he beat Chupli. Yeah, and the funny thing is it was an early stoppage. Like, he got the knockdown, but I mean, he would have very likely won that fight, but I don't think it really showed much. Rakic by decision is a lock in my opinion. Oh, we'll get to that. Right now, actually. So, Aleksandar Rakic is a pretty well-rounded fighter. His biggest problem is that he has pillow hands. Every finish that he's gotten has been from super dramatic actions. Like, he had the 1-2 head kick against Manuel, I believe, and then he had a spinning back fist knockout. I'm forgetting who that was against, but those were his 2 UFC finishes. Otherwise, he has good volume, he has good precision, all of that stuff. He just has the inability to hurt people. That definitely came to haunt him against Yuri, because Yuri was able to just eat his shots until he figured out his timing, then knock him out. So that's Rakic's biggest problem in general. On the feet, he's usually going to look to kick to set up his hands. With his hands, he doesn't really set anything up or like have intelligent boxing. It's just he will throw stuff out there. He'll throw 1-2 out there. He'll throw 2-3 out there. But it's all like pre-planned combos. None of it is adapting to his opponent or the situation. It's all just like, okay, I'm going to throw this now. And then he throws it. And then he backs up. So Rakic is one of those guys who has a very pretty style, but sometimes it is less effective than you might think it will be based on how technical it is. With the takedowns, he has a very powerful blast double leg. The problem is that he doesn't really set it up at all. So if you have any fundamental wrestling defense, you can usually stuff it. On the Azamat side, it's kind of like the complete opposite. He does not have the physicality advantage that Rakic has. He is very small for this weight class and has a very short reach for this weight class. But his boxing is absurdly technical. People were asking me, if Pereira loses to Ankalaev again, who do you think could beat Ankalaev? And my answer for that was always Azamat, because his striking is so ridiculously technical. Even though he has a sizable reach disadvantage, he does a very good job of utilizing head movement and timing to get on the inside and then unload with his power. He has a lot of power for this weight class. Maybe not Alex Pereira power, but like when he lands, it definitely puts guys down. He will look to... He's kind of similar to Wood in a sense, like shorter fighters at the weight class that just have much more educated striking than their opponents. The biggest problem for Murzakanov is that because he is so explosive and because has that physicality, he does fade as the fight goes on. So we did see against Menefield, even though Murzakanov was just hitting him with everything and just beating him senseless, he started gassing out from how hard he was beating him up. And then, of course, was able to find the finish, but he was breathing heavy before that. That could be a problem in this fight, because if Rakic comes in with the right game plan of, I'm just going to shoot takedowns to wear on Murzakanov, I could definitely see a world in which Rakic drops round 1, but then ends up picking up rounds 2 and 3 because Murzakanov has faded so much. However, with how much more dangerous Murzakanov is, and the fact that his boxing is so much more educated, I do have to pick him here. And I'm going to say that he finds the first round knockout. Very low confidence on this one. I could see it going either way, and I even could see Murzakanov just barely edging a decision here, where he takes round 1 dominantly, barely edges round 2, and then loses round 3 because he's gassed. But it's going to be a very interesting fight to see the trajectory of both of these guys. Because if Rakic loses, he's probably done. Like, he'll be on like a 4 or 5 fight losing streak, he'll be out of the UFC. If Murzakanov loses, he's also probably done, but more so because of his age. So, in a way, this is kind of like a loser goes home situation, where both of them really need this win. What do you mean Azamat has a disadvantage with physicality? He's the best density maxer in the UFC. Valid. He only landed the Neo and Tafon because they were the same height. Fair. He's like, light heavyweight Piotr, it's uncanny. Valid. But I noticed about Azamat gets stuck at range a lot. He's very good in the pocket, but can he get there? I wouldn't say he gets stuck at range. I would say more so he's looking for his timing to get into the pocket. But yes, the fact that he has to get into the pocket is always going to be a bit of a disadvantage for him. With Oliveira's grappling, I thought he looked very strong with great wrestling against Gamera. I think he can get Max down and sub him. I agree, I don't want Charles on the feet for too long. Yeah, that's possible for sure. I do hope Rakic moves up and fights Delia, as UFC plans to hold an event in Serbia, and having 2 fighters representing their countries that have a history of hating each other will be a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. Yeah, if Rakic loses this, he should probably try to get a heavyweight fight as soon as possible to avoid getting cut. Yuri or Azamat? Yuri, because Azamat's just going to gas himself out trying to knock out someone who doesn't go out unless you're Alex Pereira. Rakic is a new team this time, I heard. Yes, I have heard that as well, but we'll have to see if it's going to make a difference. Plus adds more life in heavyweight division. That is true. Rakic gave Ankalaev a very competitive fight, and if he had a right game plan, he could have beaten Ankalaev. Yes, but I also think Ankalaev is kind of overrated, to be honest. I don't think Ankalaev is that good, and I think we did finally see that in his most recent fight. Like, the first win against Alex confused me, because I was very surprised Ankalaev won, and I kind of assumed I must have just not seen something about the matchup or Ankalaev's skills or something like that. But then seeing how it played out in the second fight, I'm like, okay, yeah, Ankalaev is the skill that I thought he was. Rakic seems to like shut down once an opponent gets momentum. Yeah, that's fair. Who beats Ilya right now? Honestly, I don't think anyone beats Ilya right now. Rakic versus Hill, who would win in your opinion? I'd probably take Rakic there, because he's just more technical, and Hill has just not had urgency recently. Rapid fire, what do you think the difference was in how you predicted last week's losses and how they played out? We can review that after we do this card. Honestly, you can even argue Ankalaev lost the first, and the fact that Ankalaev made it close with the worst version of Pereira is very telling. Yeah, I thought that Ankalaev lost the first fight, but it was close, so it's not like I wanted to harp on that too much. But yeah, I mean, it's just is not a good look for Ankalaev, and I think that if he fights, like, say, Yuri, it's going to be very bad for him as well. Rakic leg kicks would destroy Hill, true. Do you think Spivak got robbed against Waldo? Yeah, I did think so. I was very surprised they gave Waldo that. Alright, so Volkov versus Almeida. Actually, let me drink some water first, and we'll get back to this. Alright, so Volkov is the tallest heavyweight in the UFC, and possibly in UFC heavyweight history. I don't know if there's... Oh, maybe, Stefan Struve. I'm forgetting how tall he is. But it's between those two who is the tallest heavyweight in UFC history. But Volkov very much fights like a tall man. He is going to throw at his jab, teeps, and so on. He'll throw knees up the middle if you try to approach too quickly, and he's just going to try to stay at range and outclass you slowly. He is very technical. The biggest problem usually is his lack of fluidity. Because he's so big, and because he makes everything so snappy, he doesn't necessarily react to everything as quickly as you'd want someone to. Which is why Tom will probably always beat him, because when Volkov starts to commit to what he's doing, Tom is probably just going to be able to move with it and either take him down or find a counter or something like that. Volkov has incorporated more wrestling recently, but there's no real nuance in the game. He's just going to take you down and then land like some pitter-patter ground and pound until you get up in all likelihood. His wrestling defense greatly depends on who he's fighting. And what I mean by that is if you have a striking threat, Volkov's takedown defense is not great at all. But if you don't have a striking threat, he's a lot better, and his wrestling defense against pure wrestlers has looked spectacular. So if we look at this... So against Romanov, stuffs 5 takedowns. So 0 for 5 for Romanov there. Against Tybura, stuffs 16 takedowns. So in the 2 fights we can look at here against pure wrestlers, neither of them got a takedown. But now even with Gane not being a great wrestler, just because he had the striking threat, he was able to take down Volkov, and relatively easily at that. Pretty similar thing happened in the Aspinall fight, in my opinion, where just because Aspinall had the striking threat, Volkov got taken down very easily. However, Almeida has turned into very much of a pure wrestler, where he's going to just run across the octagon, throw the front kick, and then shoot for the double leg immediately. Now, the pro for this is the fact that he's not going to risk being on the feet with Volkov for too long, which might help him get away from Volkov's power, and even if he can't finish Volkov, if he's able to get him down, he may be able to keep him there long enough that he drains Volkov's energy and he's no longer really a finishing threat. The problem with it is that it kind of fits now Volkov's defense of, oh, I'm just going to treat this guy like a pure wrestler. I don't have to worry about the stand-up at all. Because of that fact, I'm going to lean towards Volkov here. I'm going to say that Volkov may be able to catch Almeida coming in, either with a knee or like an uppercut or something like that. And I think even if he can't, he has a chance of doing what Blades did, and basically just being like, okay, I'm just going to commit purely to takedown defense. I'm just going to punish you at every moment I can until I eventually find the finish. I'm going to say Volkov finds a first-round TKO here, and I think that there's a solid chance that it comes via the knee. Even though we haven't seen it that much recently from Volkov, he used to use it a lot more, and this would be the matchup to bring it back. If Almeida is able to run through Volkov, though, it does make for a very interesting matchup with Aspinall, because even though I'd probably still favor Aspinall, at least we have someone who looks like they are unstoppable in a certain domain. Who is the highest ranked middleweight you'd pick to lose against Ilya? I'll look at that one later, because I'd have to think about that a bit more. Shamil, the real Mil, Ghazi over Aspinall? I think I'll have to take Aspinall there, unfortunately. Waldo's the worst modern ranked fighter off the top of my head. I don't know if he's the worst. He has some boxing. He beat Ryan Spann after all, somehow. Jailton can't fight. Oh, was that the whole DC thing? The funny thing about Jailton is that he actually has okay boxing. He just opts not to use it unless he really has to. Wasn't there a cage grab in the Romanov fight? Yes, there was a cage grab in the Romanov fight, so there is a bit of a question there. That being said, I'm not positive that Romanov would have gotten the takedown either way. Could that play a role here and Almeida is able to get a takedown and Volkov can't grab the fence? It's definitely possible. We'll have to see what happens. I'm definitely not confident about this one. Could Azamat theoretically KO Yuri with the power he does have? Theoretically, it's possible, but I really don't think it would happen. Like, Yuri's taken much bigger shots and been perfectly fine. Like, I think some of the hits he took from Roundtree are pretty much equivalent to what getting hit by Azamat would be, and Yuri just did not care whatsoever. Like, Yuri didn't even get mildly rocked in that fight, he just got irritated. Almeida shoots from far away. I don't think he's necessarily going to be able to do that against Volkov, but we'll see. Almeida is 10 times better than Romanov and Tybura, though. Yes, he definitely is, but it does show some type of pattern that's going to indicate how Volkov is going to approach it. And I do think that he's going to have an easier time approaching it than someone who was striking. So again, if Jailton changes things up here and actually strikes a bit more with Volkov, I think Volkov's chances very much diminish here, because then I think he'll start treating Almeida like a well-rounded fighter, and then he'll get taken down very easily. But if it's just the takedown defense he has to worry about, I could definitely see him winning. Do you think your opinion of Tom will change with time? Like your opinion of Topuria improved the more you saw the nuances in his game? I don't think so. I mean, I'm never going to say for sure it's impossible. But the reason why I really don't think so is because my issue with Ilya mainly came from the fact that he's very predictable, and that predictability opens up defensive holes. But it wasn't like, oh, his technique is terrible, or like anything like that. I always thought his technique was perfectly fine for what he threw. He just seemed very one-dimensional. Now, granted, when I've looked at his footwork nuance and stuff like that, it makes the one-dimensionalness, or whatever you want to call it, more okay, because he's pretty much using it as a trap to all force you into the few techniques he uses. With Aspinall, there's nothing really like that. It's like just purely a technique issue, where he just doesn't really have like any nuance in the stuff he does. His footwork isn't spectacular, his head movement isn't spectacular, he leaves his chin straight up in the air when he throws. There's a lot of things about Aspinall that are just fundamentally bad. If Almeida doesn't cook Volkov immediately on the ground, will that show he isn't ready for someone like Tom? Most likely, yeah. I hope Jailton gets finished, fair. When you watch Almeida, he does not like getting hit at all. That's probably why he barely strikes. Yeah, he got knocked out once early in his career, and then just like pretty much completely stopped striking. So he does not like being in a firefight, to say the least. That is very true. What made you think that Jones can beat Aspinall when he got tagged up by 42-year-old Stipe? Because Stipe is a much better boxer than Aspinall. And I know that Stipe doesn't have the attributes that Aspinall has, right? He's a lot slower, especially at his older age. And he's a lot less durable, most likely. But the problem is that Stipe tagged Jones because he was setting up his boxing in a nuanced manner, not just because Jones has zero defense. And granted, Jones's boxing defense is not great, but it's not terrible against someone who's very predictable with what they throw, and Aspinall is. So I am still pretty confident that Jones would beat Aspinall, but I would be very happy if Aspinall won that, if that fight ever were to happen. Why would you still pick Aspinall against Ngannou? Because Ngannou is really reliant on his chin. And as soon as he fights someone who can hurt him, that's a problem. So I think Tom has enough power to hurt Ngannou, and that will just be a problem because Ngannou will just take shots on the chin like he always does, and then he'll go out instead of being able to eat it like normal. Almeida looks 60, definitely natural. Fair. Alright, let's go on to Umar versus Bautista. So Umar has that I don't know if you want to call it like the modern Daggy style, where he uses his front leg a lot more than they used to. It's a very strange style, which, in all honesty, I don't know why they created. So he's going to throw like lead leg round kicks, lead leg side kicks, a bunch of that type of stuff. He has reasonable boxing, nothing special, but nothing to scoff at either. He has solid power. He'll throw the 1-2 relatively fundamentally. He's not going to get in a longer sequence. If there is a longer sequence, he will shoot immediately. When he shoots, a lot of the times it is onto the single leg, unless you are overextending. So he'll shoot all into the single, then he'll either get you down from that, or chain wrestle and then end up in the double and then get you down from there. He is relatively predictable in how he will fight, but he is very good at what he does, which makes it hard to defend. Bautista is another fighter who is actually surprisingly well-rounded when you look at his, like, over his career. He will use, like, flying knees and a bunch of that type of flashy stuff. But his fundamental boxing is also just very solid. He cuts good angles, he keeps his hands in the right place, and so on. He will shoot a lot, but his takedown offense isn't spectacular. His takedown defense has evolved over time, but it's still not perfect. The bigger issue, in my opinion, for Bautista is not necessarily just his pure takedown defense, but it's the fact that once he gets on the ground, what he does is really strange to me. Like, his method of getting back to the feet is unironically just spazzing. Like, if you look at him fighting Blackshear, when he gets taken down, he just starts, like, winging around his legs and his arms until he finds a space to get out. Maybe it's oddly effective in a weird way. I don't think against Umar it's going to necessarily work, though. So, I think the reality of this fight is that while Bautista is probably a bit better on the feet, Umar can just keep shooting over and over because Bautista doesn't have crazy finishing potential. And even if Umar doesn't get the first or second takedown, he will get at least one takedown in a round. And then with how spazzy Bautista is, I think Umar will be able to progress to the back and probably hold that for the majority of the round. So I'm going to say that Umar takes a decision here. I have an unhealthy hatred of Umar, so I would love for Bautista to like land a flying knee or something, but I don't see it happening. So I'm going to say Umar wins a very one-sided decision, 30-27. Bautista can't spam takedowns in Umar? Yeah, exactly. They're evenly matched and both well-rounded, but Umar's just a bit better at every aspect, and that's why Umar will probably win by dominant decision. I don't think that Umar is necessarily better on the feet. I do think that Bautista's boxing is a lot cleaner, but I do think that there is actually a pretty sizable wrestling and grappling gap. Not necessarily to the point that Umar subs Bautista, even though that is possible, but enough that like Umar's probably just going to be able to get a dominant position fairly easily. Why do you hate him? Can't say I'm a fan, to be fair. Because he's just like... So, first of all, it's the whole nepotism aspect, which I really hate. He got fast-tracked to the title. Okay, yes, I know that a lot of people get fast-tracked to the title nowadays. It was just annoying that it was purely because of his last name and not because he had any marketing potential or was mildly exciting or any of that. Then beyond that, he's just such a crybaby. Like, I've never seen someone cry more about, like, after a loss, except maybe Jamal Hill. Like, Umar just made a million excuses. He complains about Merab trash talking, even though Umar was the one who started trash talking for like literally months, if not years before that. It's just he's such an annoying fighter. Not even fighter, he's just such an annoying person. Like, he's fine as the fighter. His style is okay, I don't hate it. But he's genuinely like, I just do not like him. Jose Aldo that fought Merab / Jan or Umar. That's a good question. I'd actually say Aldo has a good shot there. Willmaker versus Hadon prediction. I'll have to look at Hadon's tape. I haven't seen him in a long time. When in doubt, spaz out Mario Bautista probably. Yeah, pretty much. Umar might get a second-ranked win this weekend. Yeah, exactly. If he fights Merab again, do you think he wins? No, I think Merab's going to finish him. I'm not a fan of Umar at all, but I would pick him to win. Yeah, you have to pick him against Bautista. Like, I don't think anyone's picking Bautista, at least anyone who's in the right mind. Volkov looks like Qui-Gon. Yeah, I have heard that. It is kind of funny. DDP or Imavov? I'd very mildly lean DDP, but I'm not confident at all. I think you're underrating Jamal Hill as a complainer who's really mad after his assassination by Pereira. Yeah, no, you are right. Hill definitely does surpass Umar in being salty, but he is the only person I could think of who surpasses Umar. Okay. Virna, I don't know if it's Jandiroba or Jandiroba, because I've heard it both ways. I'm probably just going to say Jandiroba, because that's how it looks like it's spelled, but I'm not sure. So, Jandiroba is pretty much a pure wrestler. She has reasonable submissions, but against high-level opponents, she usually doesn't really find them. It's more so control, some ground and pound, and just suffocating pressure overall. On the feet, she does have some power, but she's another one of those fighters who knows that she's a wrestler, and therefore is not really going to overextend or do much on the feet, and is mainly just going to use her hands to set up her wrestling. She does have the power to drop people in all fairness, but she commits to it so infrequently that it is not the most likely to happen in this fight, to say the least. Mackenzie Dern, as everyone knows, started as a pure jiu-jitsu practitioner. Problem is, she couldn't really get takedowns, so she had to pull guard a lot and then try to make it work from there. Her jiu-jitsu is good enough that she can get away with that on a lot of occasions. The problem is, as you fight higher level fighters and they're no longer just going to let you pull guard wildly or like always work off bottom and find a submission, things have gotten more difficult for her. Her boxing has evolved a lot. She does have power in her hands, and the most important thing about Dern here, in my opinion, is that her cardio is spectacular, especially for the power that she throws with. Against Angela Hill, she went the full 5 rounds, and she was throwing heavy every single round. I believe she got the knockdown in like either round 1 or 2, and then still kept throwing hard, even after trying to finish the fight there. So, Dern is going to have a massive cardio advantage, because Jandiroba we have seen slow down on multiple occasions. Even in the fight against Mizuki, as I was saying. Part of the reason why I thought Mizuki won is because Jandiroba slowed down so significantly, that Mizuki was doing well at the end of rounds and stuff like that. This is a rematch. They have fought before. Dern did win. And honestly, I know a lot of people are picking Jandiroba here because they think she's just going to get the takedowns and lay on top, which is possible. I feel like the logical pick here has to be Dern. And the reason for that is that on the feet, I'm going to favor Dern. Not by a massive margin, but I feel like her boxing's a little bit cleaner. I feel like she does have more power and she has a lot higher willingness to throw. On the ground, in terms of positional wrestling, I 100% favor Jandiroba. The problem is that means that Jandiroba's path to victory is take Dern down every single round and do enough to bank at least 3 of the rounds and not get subbed. Now, as Jandiroba gets more tired, the not get subbed is going to get harder and harder, especially because Dern again does retain her cardio and is able to sub people later into fights. Even if Dern isn't able to find a sub, I do think she will have submission attempts, and I think those submission attempts may sway close rounds where not much else happens. So I think that Dern is essentially just going to be the more aggressive fighter everywhere, and that will probably either lead to a late submission or a decision. Thank God, WMMA breakdown fair. What was your reaction when DDP versus Hamza round 1 ended? I was just so annoyed he pulled guillotine. I'm like, what are you doing? Imavov would win 3 rounds and DDP just falls over and ankle picks Imavov and gets a face crank on him in round 4. I would not be surprised. Topuria versus Almakhan prediction. Leaning Almakhan, but not at all confident. Jamal Hill's presence is a danger to people with heart conditions. The saltiness is too much. Valid. But in all seriousness, thank you for not being an asshole about WMMA. Too many the couch dwellers with YouTube accounts are, and it sucks. No problem. When Jamal does it, it's funny. Yeah, it was mildly funny seeing him throw it. To be honest, Jandiroba beat 2 people who are world's better strikers than Dern. Yes, but the problem is that she did it with the grappling. And against Dern, she's not going to have the same massive advantage there. She will have the wrestling advantage, but very low chance she subs Dern, of course. And Dern is not just going to let her get free ground and pound off. Like every time that Jandiroba postures to try to land ground and pound or tries to transition, it's an opportunity for Dern to find a sub. I don't favor anyone on the feet. Dern has never been the better striker in any of these fights. I disagree with that because let's see. So if we're looking at Dern, right? Angela Hill fight, almost all on the feet. And not that Angela Hill is champion quality right now. Of course, she's older and such, but Angela Hill is also no slouch on the feet. So I do feel like this was a very good look for Dern that she was able to beat her up on the feet. These fights, of course, went badly, but these are two heavy-handed striker specialists. So getting dropped by like Andrade when you're being a bit reckless is not a great look, but it's also not terrible. Getting dropped by Lemos, like, yeah, that happens if you're a bit reckless. And then against Godinez, her striking looked pretty solid. Like, she did get one takedown in both the rounds, but her control wasn't crazy, and it's not like she was threatening submissions or landing much on the ground there. So this was mostly won on the feet, essentially. So Godinez is a reasonable boxer, especially in rounds 1 and 2. In round 3, she kind of falls off. But I do think that she was basically outstriking both Godinez, Hill, and even Haqparast if we look at the stats. Like, Dern only had one takedown here, and she did have a significant striking advantage, even if it isn't the most strikes in general. So I don't think that the narrative that, like, Dern has never outstruck anyone is really quite true. How do you see Ilya versus Paddy going? Ilya's gonna knock him out in, like, 2 minutes. It's stupid. But, okay. I shouldn't say it's stupid, because I still think it's the fight to make, because Gaethje really should not get a title shot. How impressed would you be with Islam if he beats JDM? I mean, I wouldn't be massively shocked. I mean, it would increase my opinion of him a little bit, but if Islam were to find a win, I do think there's multiple ways for him to do it. I think he could find the head kick when JDM drops his hands in the pocket, or I think, of course, maybe just welterweight sucks, and Islam's able to just out-wrestle him easily and sub him, and that would not be absolutely shocking to me either. Do you think Imavov gets subbed by Khamzat? I don't think Imavov gets subbed, but he definitely could lose a lopsided decision. How do you see Michael Morales versus Sean Brady? I think Brady just eventually gets the takedown of Awesome. DDP has a few wins by guillotine sub and uses a lot as a reflex getting taken down, so it wasn't surprising that he would overuse it. Yes, but I would think that against Chimaev, you would be like, okay, let's maybe not voluntarily go to our backs until, like, say, round 3, 4, maybe when he's getting tired. So I understand the reflex, but it's something you would just need to train out of him during camp. Jan had so much room to move around underneath Virna. Her being able to retain guard till the end of round 1 made me more confident in Dern's ability to do the same. Valid. Do you think Umar's cardio can come back to betray him if he drops round 1? It's possible. Like, Bautista's saying he's going to break Umar and knock him out. Maybe Bautista sets a crazy pace, lands like 100 strikes in round 1, and, like, absolutely exhausts Umar. Like, that would be the one way I could see him winning this, though I don't think there's a very high chance, because he'll probably get taken down if he tries to do it anyways. We're really going to see if Scousers don't get knocked out about it. If Virna isn't able to ground and pound off, isn't able to get ground and pound off because of Dern's BJJ, don't you think that reduces the chances of Virna gassing and getting subbed? If Virna isn't able to get ground and pound off, I don't think she's going to be able to win the rounds is the problem. Because again, on the feet, I think that we're going to see Dern get ahead by a little bit. And even if Virna gets the takedowns and we see a lot of control time, we'll see like Dern swivel for a submission or something that just gives her like a slight edge. So I could see this being a case where Dern edges out a very close decision. Brady versus Protest prediction. I'd still probably say Brady sub, but I'm not as confident there. How do you think Imavov versus Chimaev goes? I mean, Imavov either chins him in the first 2 rounds or he just gets out-grappled to a decision, most likely. Surprise Turner is back. I think he finishes Barboza. Should be a safe pick. Yeah, I agree with you there. How do you think O'Malley does against the top-level bantamweight at this point? He could still beat a lot of people. I do think people are underestimating him just because of the Merab losses. Merab is exceptionally good at this point. Not saying Paddy would win, but he does have pretty good fight IQ. I just don't think he has a skill set. Don't you think that Dern has a suspect chin, though? I don't think she has a quite suspect chin because she's eaten a lot of damage and been okay, but I know what you're saying. I just don't think that Virna's going to be able to drop her. And if Virna can't drop her, I don't think she's going to look like she's winning on the feet. Alright, let's get to the last one, then we could talk about the general stuff around the card. Oh, before we do the main event, if you guys are betting on this card and you're not using my service yet, do consider doing so. We're up like over 250 units on the year at this point. I've hit like 2 plus 25,000 parlays and such, so we're doing very well there. And of course, all the bets for this week are out already there. We have multiple algorithms we use to bet. Then you guys can see my bets as well, and everyone's very supportive in the community. There's an integrated Discord that we use for everything. So if you guys are not signed up, consider doing so. The link is in the description for that. Always feel free to DM me if you guys have questions there. Now let's do the main events quickly. Okay, so you guys know I'm not a fan of heavyweight. This is no exception, but I'll break this down as objectively as possible. So Tom Aspinall is of course a power puncher, but I do think that his biggest strength is his speed for the weight class, because the way he's able to connect without people necessarily seeing it and being able to dart into the pocket and then get back out pretty quickly, that is definitely what he's best at here. He is going to engage with the 1-2 repetitively. He'll throw calf kicks on the outside if he doesn't want to engage that quickly. And then from there, sometimes he'll throw like the same leg, same arm side attack. So as I was saying before, he'll throw a knee and then an elbow with the same arm, or he'll throw a kick and then a punch right after that with the same side arm, and so on. Those are the only real attacks he's shown so far, though. It's either the 1-2, the same side combo, or the calf kick. To get the fight to the ground, he has a few options. He has the double leg blast takedown, which is very quick. Then he also has the body lock off of strikes. He was able to get Volkov down with the body lock, basically just by intercepting a mid-combo and dragging him down. Gane, on the other hand, is basically going to dance around on the outside. Gane is pretty technical in how he throws everything to an extent. I do think his technique is overrated because of the fact that he cannot generate any power. So Gane's biggest weakness for a heavyweight is that he has absolute pillow hands. Like, he did finish a very old Junior Dos Santos, but if we look at most of his other finishes, they're either massive accumulation damage TKO or they're submissions. So for example, it took him 109 punches as a heavyweight to take out Spivak. It took him 110 to take out Tuivasa. It took him 98 to take out Lewis, and so on, right? Even in some fights where he does land that many, he isn't able to get any damage off. His only like real knockout win was against a very old Junior Dos Santos, and that was like a flush elbow to the side of the head. So that is, in a way, his biggest problem in this fight, because he doesn't really have like head kicks or anything crazy that are going to take out Aspinall. His calf kicks and such and his body kicks are not well set up. So every time he throws them, he's at risk of getting taken down. Volkov basically just started punishing every kick that Gane threw and at least threatened a takedown or a strike off of it. Gane also has the problem that whenever he commits to a punch, he overextends and then gets vulnerable to being dragged down after that. So Jones was able to just grab the body lock and then trip into the ground because Gane overextended looking for power on a left straight. So Gane's only real option is to dance around on the outside and look for an accumulation of damage. Because even if Aspinall blitzes in recklessly like he does, and Gane is able to find a clean check hook, from what we've seen, it's not going to bother Aspinall at all in all likelihood. Which is why I think that Gane has a very low chance in this fight. Even though I don't have a high opinion of Aspinall, I think he effectively wins this fight however he wants. Because Gane is probably not going to take the lesson of, oh, I can't kick here. So Aspinall can just wait for a kick, catch it, take him down, and sub him. If he wants to fight on the feet, he can just force Gane backwards, because if you put a lot of pressure on Gane, he'll back up straight to the fence. And then Aspinall can just unload there and probably TKO Gane, because again, Gane can't hurt him and he can hurt Gane. So, one-sided fight in my opinion. I am very surprised that anyone is picking Gane. I know a lot of people are being like, oh, we're overlooking Gane. I mean, like, we would have to see some ridiculous improvement out of Gane for him to even have a remote chance here, in my opinion. My pick is technically Aspinall first round submission. I think that people are saying like, oh, he's going to try to make this look more spectacular than Jones. I think the way to make it look more spectacular than Jones is to find a quicker submission here, because then it's a direct comparison. Gane, again, also so easy to take down based on how he throws. So I think we're going to see Gane throw a kick, Aspinall catch it, take him down, and then Aspinall finds like a Kimura or something like that. Ciryl Gane is probably not going to land the left hook. Probably not. And even if he does, I don't think it's going to matter. A spinning elbow would be a very good counter against Tom. It would be a good counter to the 1-2, yes. The only way I can see Gane winning is with a spinning elbow when Tom blitzes with the big Chalet fair. And the thing is, we've never seen Gane throw something like that before, so it would have to come out of nowhere. Who do you think is the better striker, Tom or Gane? If we're talking about like pure technique of strike, Gane is probably a little bit better, but in terms of effectiveness, Tom is better. Ciryl gonna have dinner with Napoleon after the Saturday fair. Could Islam out-wrestle Usman if they ever fought? Very unlikely. I do see Aspinall finding a rear naked choke off of Kumara attempt. That's also possible. Imagine Gane colds Aspinall with a spinning wheel kick. I would love to see it, but I really doubt it's going to happen. Why is Bilal such a nightmare matchup for Brady, considering you're very low on Bilal and seem high on Brady? Because Brady, when you put a lot of pressure on him, fades in terms of cardio. Now, there's very few people who can do that without getting taken down or getting just knocked out, because Brady does have decent hands. Bilal just has that iron chin, so you can just walk through all of Brady's combos, even though Brady is a better technical striker. And Brady doesn't quite have the wrestling to get Bilal down. Brady is very effective once the fight hits the ground, but his wrestling is not quite as good as someone like Bilal or Usman. The reason why I take Brady against Usman is because I think Brady would actually have a perfectly fine time on the feet, because Usman's not going to apply blind pressure. Against Bilal, though, who's just going to run forwards with his and just eat everything on his chin and keep going, it's a very hard style for Brady to fight, even if he's a significantly better fighter. Why do you think someone like Tom doesn't want to throw hooks? It's always 1-2. I think he wants to maximize, or I should say minimize, the window at which his opponent has to counter. Tom is very fast, so if he jumps in with the 1-2 and then exits, there isn't as much time his opponent can do anything. Now, we have seen people counter with the check hook a few times, even right after he throws, but there is less of a time as if he was continuing the combination with hooks. Jones or Francis? Jones. Also, watch Tom sparring on his YouTube channel. He's very underrated. And people can do a lot in sparring. If they can't do it in a fight, I don't really count it personally. Off topic, but who's next for John Silva? I'd say you should take a step down and fight like a... What's a good... Fight someone like in like the bottom 10 to 15 of the rankings. Aspinall by converting Gane to Christianity. It's wild. You probably already answered this earlier, but what was your reaction to RDR versus Allen? Although RDR was ill going in, he gassed so fast into the second, looked useless on the bottom, Allen looked fine. So RDR was not sick, by the way. So that was a fake account that said that. RDR was perfectly healthy from what we know. It's what I expected. RDR's cardio has always been terrible. RDR has never been the most skilled fighter either. His pure BJJ is pretty solid, but even his control is not spectacular. Did you break down Brady versus Islam? Interesting matchup. I might do a reel on that at some point. What's your opinion on Tom's boxing? I've had a debate with someone saying Dominic Reyes is better. Yeah, no, I do think that Reyes overall has slightly better boxing. The biggest problem with Reyes is he doesn't like moving forwards. But as long as he's not against a counter-striker like Olberg, that's probably not going to be the biggest problem. But in terms of pure technique, like, yeah, I'd say Reyes is better. Reyes or Tom? I'd still lean Reyes because of the matchup. Because Tom is going to blitz forwards, and it leaves a very big opportunity for Reyes to counter. Cyryl's last good performance against anyone that could grapple is Spivak. Come on, man. I'm confused what that's responding to, but yes, that is true. I want to see John versus Giga. I feel bad for Giga if that fight happens, but yeah, it would be a fun one. Silva versus Milky Costa. That could be fun, yeah. We're already past the picks, yes. I can recap for anyone who missed it. Also, he has better cardio than Gane. Has Gane ever been seen not heavy breathing? I don't think that Aspinall necessarily has better cardio than Gane, because again, we've only seen Aspinall in round 2. Gane, again, we've seen be perfectly fine in round 5. So if it does go late, I expect Gane to have an advantage. I just don't think it's going to go there. JDM's path to victory is a 50-50, or do you favor JDM? I mildly favor JDM. I think that JDM needs to blitz. I think he basically needs to use Islam's tendency to do the lead hook counter, slip under a strike, and then move straight back. As long as he could time that, he could blitz forwards and catch him. RDR cut 25 pounds 5 times in the last 12 months. Do you think this matters? It's definitely not helping. I'll say that much. I don't think we would have had a different outcome either way, but yeah, I mean, there's no point in doing that realistically. Oh, it's on or Tom. I'd take Alex Pereira. I think Islam's striking is gonna shine against JDM. He's probably gonna get forced to stand in good amount like his first Volk fight. Possible. Does Tom get it done in one? I think there's a solid chance. Yes, please do a quick recap. I don't know why I thought the live was tomorrow. Yeah, I got you. Okay, so going back to the beginning quickly. I took Amorim by sub, but I do think Mizuki is underrated, so I'm not as confident as a lot of other people are. I took Maksum by submission. Hamdi by TKO, but it's Hamdi, so. I took Delgado by TKO round 1 via knee up the middle. Walter Walker by submission round 1. I said heel hook, but it could easily be an arm triangle or something like that. Ludovic Klein by decision. Aliskerov by TKO round 1. Haqparast by TKO round 2. Murzakanov by TKO round 1. Volkov by TKO round 1. Umar by decision. Dern by a late submission. And Aspinall by round 1 submission. Did you see the clip of Connor? He looks healthy and in better shape. Do you think he makes the comeback? I did not see it, but I have heard about it. He definitely could make the comeback against Chandler. It's very reasonable. Yeah, if RDR had norovirus, I don't think he'd be able to fight. If you know, you know. That is rough. Yeah, I mean, yeah, it was a fan account that said that. He didn't have norovirus. Who is Hamzat's worst matchup at middleweight? It's tough to say. I don't know between Fluffy, Imavov, and DDP. Now, people will say the DDP one is crazy, but I think that if he doesn't pull the guillotines and he just works on his scrambling a little more, there's a chance he can gas Hamzat out faster and finish the fight later. Would I favor it? Probably not, but it's still possible. When Brendan Allen is not doing dumb stuff, he's a very good fighter. Yes, that is true. I think Tom does 1-2s because in heavyweight, no one can counter it all with the same speed as him. Yeah, that's true. Can you think of a fighter who has all the attributes to be a nasty finisher, but chooses to patty cake around? That's a good question. Let's look at the rankings quickly. Probably, like, actually, maybe Ankalaev. Yeah, it definitely could be Ankalaev. Thanks, I think the only pick yours that is different to my parlays is Volkov. I have Almeida moneyline on one of them. That's perfectly reasonable. It's a very low confidence pick. Does Allen's last performance change your opinion of him in any way? Honestly, I think if DDP doesn't fix his problems, Allen could be difficult for him on the ground. I'd still pick DDP, but it doesn't really change my opinion. I knew Allen was good. I mean, I picked him for a reason. Like, again, Allen is super underrated. I don't think he necessarily showed better fight IQ, though, because people are saying his fight IQ is good, but he also did decide to take down a nearly unconscious opponent and, like, land weak ground and pound for the entire round instead of hit him once on the feet and just have him get knocked out. Do you drink coffee? I do not. Strickland versus Hernandez prediction. I'm going to lean Strickland's by probably, like, round 2 TKO. Man, I really want to like you, but when you said it'd be fun to see Aspinall get knocked out with spinning stuff, I'm like, why, bro? I just want to... It's always interesting to see a crazy upset like that, because I don't think Gane can win, and I do have bets on Aspinall, so I'd probably be annoyed if it happened, in all honesty, anyways, but it would be crazy to see an upset like that where I just was not expecting it at all. I do like being surprised sometimes. Have you ever been to a UFC event? If you have, which events? I have not gone to a UFC event in person, just too expensive. Good morning, Marco. How much do you think the threat of a takedown plays into the perception of striking skill? A lot. Because there are some people who are just not good at striking, who look like good strikers because of the takedown threat. For example, Islam Makhachev, not a great striker, but it can work because the grappling threat is so big. How do you see the fight going if Gane defends the takedowns? And I just see Gane getting knocked out. Topuria versus Islam, who do you favor? I'm very confident in Topuria. I think Imavov stylistically is technically the worst matchup given his skill set, but I don't really trust his gas tank. The Kyle fight was perfect for him and not challenging enough. Imavov definitely could catch Chimaev in rounds 1 to 2, but if he doesn't, he's going to be in trouble. Strickland and TKO in the same sentence. When Strickland's not fighting someone who's extremely good on the feet, or just fighting super conservatively, he does get finishes. I don't know about you, but I don't like the high guard Brady uses against someone like Morales, who finds openings and has good power overall. I almost feel like the high guard is good for someone whose main game is not striking. Because as a grappler, you're probably not going to develop like extremely good head movement in most cases, so it just makes sense to hold the high guard in my opinion. Chimaev versus Pereira predictions. I think that one is very 50-50. Because if Pereira could just catch him instantly, or Chimaev gets a first takedown, the fight's pretty much over. Like, it just depends what happens in the first 30 seconds. Do you play any video games? Not as much anymore, but I did used to. How much sleep do you get on average daily? Probably like 8 hours or so. You sound like Handler, the dude that plays Battlefield. It's scary. I have no idea who that is, to be honest, but interesting. About the Topuria versus Islam, do you still favor Topuria at 170? Yeah, I don't think it matters what weight class. Besides Olberg, who do you think is the next most dangerous fight for Yuri? I mean, Alex is always a very dangerous fight for him. Other than those two, I don't think there's anyone who's too dangerous in all honesty. What do you think is next for Izzy, and do you think his career is done? I think he'll take 1 or 2 more fun ones. But seriously though, how high is the chance of a spinning elbow versus Aspinall given the recent epidemic? It's always possible. For Gane to pull that out of nowhere, I would be a little bit surprised. But I wouldn't think it's gonna happen. CLD or Tulio? Off the top of my head, I'll favor Tulio, but I'll have to look at it more. I think people overrate Chimaev's cardio from his last fight. It doesn't really take cardio to lay in crucifix. I think someone like Allen or Imavov who can make him work will gas him. I do agree with the first part. I do think people are overrating his cardio. The problem is that I don't know if Imavov can really like push the pace later in the fight. Gane can't win. He doesn't even have power. His main goal is to point fight for 25 minutes to show over. Fair. Where does Topuria rank on your GOAT list? Top 10 now. I'd have to think about where exactly. How do you think you'd do against Aspinall? Slightly towards Aspinall, maybe? Probably. Real talk, Merab versus Volk. I do think Merab actually has a solid chance now. Now that his striking has gotten better, I think he could probably beat Volk. Do you think Gane versus Volkov was a robbery? Okay, so I did think that Volkov won, and my opinion about this has been pretty consistent since watching the fight for the first time. I thought Volkov won, but I don't think that it was a robbery, because the contested round is round 2. And of course, Volkov wins. Volkov lands the spinning back fist, which is like the highlight of him for that round. The problem is that Gane did rock him back later with a straight right, and then Gane also had a, a Von Flue choke attempt. So with the Von Flue plus rocking him with the right hand, does it make up for the spinning back fist? Like, it is a debatable question. I did think that even despite those moments, Volkov did do a little bit better throughout the rest of the round. So again, I do mildly in Volkov, but I think the narrative that it was a massive robbery is not quite accurate. Have you already done all the fight breakdowns? Yes. Damn, I just got here curious how you'd rank the top strikers at welterweight. JDM and Protez are probably the best pure strikers at welterweight for sure. Who beats Chimaev 205, 185? Very hard to say. I mean, if someone's going to beat him soon, it'll probably be Imavov, but I'm not going to pick Imavov against him, most likely. High guard would be fine for Brady as long as his movement has improved, because if he's just standing in front of Morales with nothing but he's going to eat big shots easily. I think the problem is that Morales is going to feel uncomfortable throwing hard because of the takedown threat. Shevchenko versus Whaley prediction. I'm heavily biased, but I'm picking Whaley. Guru said he had a dream where Gane landed a spinning elbow on Tom, but Tom survived and finished him. I could imagine that, because Gane just has so little power. Hot take, Merab could end 2026 as the GOAT. He could. It's possible. Merab or John Silva. I think that John is a very bad matchup for him because Merab has always been open for the lead hook, even in his last fight, and John loves the lead hooks. Thoughts on Rufi's future? Should he and Silva move to a different gym? I think the gym is fine. I think that he just needs to rework his style a bit to understand that he needs to have something on the back foot. What are your criteria for GOAT status? Double champ for sure. Then beyond that, the more defenses you have, generally speaking, the better. There are a few exceptions, of course, for like quality of wins. So Topuria goes up on the list because his wins are all so high quality after he became champ. Favorite dessert? Maybe cheesecake. Who do you see beating Tom at heavyweight? As what we know of him, you can say Alex. Yeah, I'd say Alex on. Aspinall has to keep his chin down, and he's the decade-long GOAT. Maybe not if Alex moves up, but if he doesn't, then very possibly. Who do you favor, JDM versus Protez? I'd favor JDM, because even though Protez did make some improvements in terms of fighting on the back foot, I still think it's his weakness, and I think JDM will exploit it. Doesn't help that one of the judges that gave it to Gane gave Canelo 118 to 110 versus GGG. Triple G, I should say. Yeah, that's not a good look. Protez versus Edwards prediction. I'm going to say Protez TKO, even though Edwards definitely has the ability to win. I hope GDP improves his grappling defense. Valid. Same. What can Jan do to beat Merab this time around? He has to try to knock out Merab, because you're not going to beat Merab by decision. You're right about Hamzat cardio and the contenders not being able to push a pace, which should be fluffy, but his disadvantages are obvious. Basically, no one is complete enough to beat Hamzat. Very possibly, yes. W, cheesecake enthusiast. Yes. What would you rate Tom's chin? I mean, we haven't really seen it tested that much. He did get rocked by Pavlovich, but that's like not a terrible look. It's Pavlovich. Otherwise, he seemed okay, but he hasn't really taken many big shots, so it's hard to say. I mean, it's definitely not like a Francis Ngannou chin, but it seems fine. Silva lost to Diego Lopez, was fully on him trying to blitz Diego for no reason. Yeah, I agree with that. Topuria versus Protez at 170. I'm going to go Topuria. How do you see Jones versus Aspinall? I don't know if someone else has asked you. Yeah, I still think Jones would win, which is a controversial take now. But I still do think so. What were your top 3 video games? I think my favorite of all time is Witcher 3. Besides that, I'd have to think more about 2 and 3. I do like Total War Rome and the Civ games as well. Imagine not picking Tiramisu. It is good, but not my favorite. In my opinion, JDM has footwork, speed, and power to ruin someone with such a predictable counter as Azamat thoughts. Yeah, that's part of why I'm giving him the edge. My only concern with him is the fact that he needs to drop his hands to stuff the takedowns. Well, okay, that much is obvious, but more so that he needs to drop his hands in the pockets in preparation to stuff the takedowns. Why would John say that Rufi's takedown defense is the best he's ever seen? Was that bluff? I mean, it could just be the same thing as Merab does. Every time one of Merab's teammates fights, Merab is like, oh, he's amazing. He stuffs all of my takedowns. I can't do anything against him. And then it's not like that. So it definitely could have been the same thing. I think Gane... Well, okay, another thing to say about Rufi, though, his pure takedown defense is good. The problem is when you combine several things, like pressuring him, and then clinch work, and then the fact that BSD was throwing the head kick to force Rufi's hands up. When you combine all of those things, it might be that Rufi's takedown defense was fine in isolation, but when you put all of it together, it's no longer fine. I think Gane might make it to round 2 due to his lateral movement. It's possible. What does Pavlovich need to do for his career to get back on track? Unironically, he needs a sports psychologist, and he needs to get like his aggression back. Can BSD out-wrestle Dariush? Probably not. I think it'll be neutral, though. Low-key, I could beat Merab by decision, but now that I think about it, might be a tough ask. Bit of a tough ask, yes. Is there anyone at 170 below that you would pick to beat Topuria? Not right now, no. BSD or Patty? BSD. 6'3", 200-pound grappler. If I want to get into the UFC, would you recommend becoming a heavyweight blob? No, if you're 6'3" and you're 200 pounds, I wouldn't say bulking up to heavyweight is your best option, to be honest. Like, could you get wins on there on the regional scene? Yeah, sure. I'm not sure if there's a reason to cut down in the regional scene. But after that, I'd go like middleweight, maybe. Lost Planet was one of my favorite games, fair. Do you think any of the fighting nerds will be champion? I still think John Silva will. Witcher 3 is so good. Saw someone saying Sean Woodson looks like the botchling. That's wild. Pfeiffer versus Imavov in 5 rounds. Who'd you pick? I would pick Imavov right now. How do you envision Patty versus Topuria going? I think Patty throws a calf kick. Topuria reads it and flatlines him with an overhand. Alex versus Chimaev at 205. I think it's very 50-50. Why are you so convinced that Ilya still beats people at 170 despite that meaning that he's at a massive size/strength disadvantage? Because I don't think it's going to matter. I think he's going to be at a massive speed advantage. We even saw that against Oliveira, where Topuria hadn't looked like crazy fast or anything in his previous fights. Then he fights Oliveira, and he looks crazy fast. That's going to be exasperated at 170. His technique is going to be better. His footwork is going to be much better. And overall, it just should be easy for him to use his footwork and his technique to get people into a big shot. Why do you like BSD so much? His ceiling seems low because of how slow he is. I like his mentality. I do have a bias towards fighters who just want to go to war. My coach says doing bicep curls is bad for MMA. Is that true? I mean, I wouldn't say it's explicitly bad, but I would say it's not, like, efficient. BSD will probably just chin Dariush. Yeah, probably. Dariush beats Gamrot in a rematch, too. Gamrot might knock him out now, because Dariush's chin is not getting any better, to say the least, and Gamrot's striking has improved a little bit. Easiest top 10 middleweight match for Audeba Gautier. Let's see what we have here. Probably Roman Dolidze. Maybe Vettori, but Vettori might just straight up be immortal, and Gautier could gas out trying to finish him. We have seen Dolidze get hurt, so I think Gautier could probably put out Dolidze. It's actually funny how all the current champs have ability to reach double champ status, or at least try to fight for a second belt, except Jack. Fair. Yeah, I mean, Jack's kind of just the perfect size for welterweight. Chin-ups are what bicep curls wish to be when they grow up. Fair. Unironically, I'm a blob at light heavyweight, but I can 1000% beat an unranked heavyweight. Give me a fight versus Ty. I unironically think I have a small chance at winning. Very possible, yeah. Pfeiffer versus Gautier. I'd still pick Pfeiffer because the more experience, but it's hard to say. Unironically, Paulo Costa versus Topuria. Who do you pick? Probably Topuria. I would not listen to your MMA coach for strength and conditioning, same way as I wouldn't listen to a strength and fitness coach for MMA training. Well, I think there's some truth into that, where, like, yeah, you want a specialist for everything, if you have a good coach who has seen a lot and worked with a lot of athletes, they're going to generally know what works in terms of strength and conditioning. Marvin or Bruno? I'll probably take Bruno, but I'm not confident. Gaudier versus Vittori, unstoppable force versus immovable object. My god, yeah. Pereira or Tom? Pereira. Robocop versus Rob, who do you got? Probably Robocop at this point. Any fighter you personally dislike? Umar. How would the average MMA fighter do against a serial... Oh, how would the average WMMA fighter do against a serial killer? It depends on the WMMA fighter. I think a lot of them have a reasonable chance, though. Especially if the person's not armed. If we're talking about someone like a knife, that might be a different story. Costa or Izzy? I'd still probably take Izzy. Costa's style is not good against him. Are you concerned that Topuria will be undersized if he moves up? He looks so small versus Oliveira in terms of height and reach. Not really, because his style is not about using size. I wonder why Leon fights like an Oblivion NPC. Seems like he has flashbacks every time anyone lands anything. Yeah, I don't know either. Ilya versus Bilal. Ilya would knock him out. Topuria versus Alex at 180 catchweight. Who wins? Okay, Alex would practically die to make 180. If not actually die. And Topuria would be completely fresh, so Topuria is going to win that. Izzy or Ilya? Probably Ilya. What's the biggest guy you would pick Ilya to win against? The biggest guy? Like Derek Lewis, probably? How do you think Pereira would beat Tom? Check left hook. Favorite fighter? I don't know who my pure favorite is. I have a few favorites. I like John Silva. I like BSD. I like Oliveira, of course. It might be Oliveira. A lot of trainers have snapped up the best athletes in the world. Imbalanced musculature, poor form. A lot of torn ACLs come from the gym. Yeah, I agree with that. The problem is if you don't have a pure strength and conditioning coach, it's better than not listening to anyone. Holloway low-key knocks out Charles. Very possible. Any WMA fighters you think you could beat? Even now, in all honesty, I could probably beat a fair amount. How on earth did Alex make 185 men? Yeah, every time he fights, we're going to hear that. And Derek would chin Ilya? No. I would give Derek maybe like a 2% chance against Ilya. Ilya versus Chris Barnett would be fireworks, fair. Who's someone you would pick to beat Ilya? I could see someone like Chimaev being a really bad matchup. Prime Till versus Ilya? I'm still picking Ilya. Bro, I genuinely can't tell if you're joking about Ilya versus Lewis, Izzy, and Costa. I feel like a lot of newer MMA fans never watched open weight fights, which is the problem with these conversations. Like, especially when there's a skill gap, size is not that meaningful an advantage, especially if the smaller fighter has a style in which they're not, like, reliant on their size. So, there are certain flyweights that are like physicality abusers, right? In which case, yeah, going up would be bad for them. Fighting a larger fighter would be a problem for them. But if we look at like skilled smaller fighters who do not rely on their physicality and have a very specific style in which it doesn't really matter the size of their opponent, it's just not going to matter the size of their opponent. Who do you think is a good next fight for Moicano? Maybe like the winner of Forrest Dawson? Bro lives Ilya. No, I'm kind of an Ilya hater in all honesty. Like, if you've seen a lot of my content, I do think he has a lot of weaknesses. I just think that right now there's not many people who are like primed to beat him. How do you... I assume that means how do you think Prime Connor does against JDM? I'd probably pick Prime Connor, honestly. Chimaev versus Aspinall? I'd take Aspinall there. Who's your favorite southpaw of all time? Maybe Prime Connor. Or, of course, like BSD is a southpaw, so if we want to say that, then sure, maybe BSD. Holloway or Charles? I would lean Holloway, but Charles definitely has a chance. Cannonier versus RDR. Cannonier. Rumble versus Pereira. I'd say Pereira, but I'm not confident. What percentage of a chance do you give Gane? Maybe 10. Masvidal versus Leon. Leon should take it. Imavov or Ilya. Well, that's a good one. I might have to pick Imavov there, but not confidently. Khabib versus Colby or Usman. I think Khabib could beat Colby, but I don't think he would beat Usman. Pick GSP versus Ilya out of curiosity. I think GSP probably takes that. With the whole WNBA gambling, sorry, not the NBA gambling scandal that broke today, do you think any mafia or mob business goes around with fighters to profit? It's really hard to say. I honestly don't know. It's possible, for sure. I would take Merab to beat a lot of lightweights. Yeah, I mean, I would take Merab to beat a lot of welterweights, even middleweights. Wouldn't JDM be able to beat Ilya? His boxing is phenomenal, his striking and phenomenal in general is great. The difference is the footwork. I think that Ilya has significantly better footwork. And of course, with the power discrepancy, it's a bit of a problem for JDM because he would need to be more perfect than Ilya would need to be. DC versus Pereira. I'd take Pereira by like 3rd or 4th round TKO. What's the knockout or moments you have screamed loudest watching UFC? When Oliveira dropped Gaethje. Hot take, Usman Nurmagomedov would have a tough out against Duncan. Yeah, he might lose to Duncan. Chance Umar has to win by KO. Maybe like 15%, 20%. How do you feel about going 5 and 8 on your last picks? Happens. I got the important one. I'll take it. Oh yeah, I did tell you guys I would review last week. So, Croden versus Lisboa. I leans Lisboa, but with WMMA debuts, you never know what's going to happen. I still think Croden has a lot of the same issues. She has 0 defense whatsoever, and her cardio is suspect. She does have a lot of willpower, though. Her knees are dangerous. If you let her get into the clinch, she's always going to do well. So I will increase my opinion of Croden a little bit, but I still think as soon as she fights a WMA fighter who has some power, she's going to be in trouble. This is the one that annoys me I got wrong the most, because part of me knew this was going to happen. Like, throughout the entire breakdown last week, I was saying Bakoyev sucks, like, repetitively. And then I still picked him, because I was like, Belguri probably isn't going to be able to deal with the takedowns. Okay, well, Belguri was able to deal with the takedowns, because Bakoyev is even worse than I thought. And I still thought he was terrible. So, yeah, Bakoyev has 0 future, just cut him, or just give him someone who's going to knock him out. I don't know how he got any wins. Like, it's just embarrassing. Luciano versus Oliveira went pretty much as I expected. Luciano was just better everywhere. Luciano has a future in this division. She's solid. Jordan Santos versus Danny Barlow. So Danny Barlow got cut, for those of you who have not seen yet. This fight was interesting in that a lot of it was because Barlow's an idiot. Like, Barlow could have knocked Santos out probably 2 or 3 times, but after he hurt him, he just kept like winging hooks and overhands for whatever reason. Santos has great pressure and volume. His defense is still a little bit questionable. Could Santos get some more wins at this weight class? Yeah, it's possible. I think the biggest problem for Santos is, even though his pressure is solid, it's just his power is really not there. So if he doesn't overwhelm people, he's just in trouble in general. But I do like Santos' style. I'm probably not going to be able to pick him that frequently, though, so we'll see what happens there. Bruno Silva versus Hyun-Sung Park. So this is the first one that really surprised me on the card. Because I thought Park was a lot better than that. Seeing him not be able to get any of the takedowns and doing so poorly on the feet was not something I was at all expecting. I don't think that I underrated Bruno Silva. He still had a lot of the same issues. Like, he's still very open on the feet. Even in the grappling, he will give up his back a lot of the time. So I still understand why I picked Park. It's not one of those things where I feel like I had a terrible read. But I do think that Park definitely got exposed to maybe just can crushing and really needs to like go back to the drawing board and develop his skill set a bit more. Defensively, he's just not good enough. He just was not dealing well with like Bruno Silva's uppercut and a few other things, and it was just a not good look of a performance for him. Harish Lang versus Cody Gibson. we didn't see much, but yeah, Cody Gibson does throw a little bit too wild and throw naked calf kicks and stuff like that sometimes. Orichi Lang punished immediately. Good for him. Gibson should probably retire at this point. He's old and on a loss streak now. This was, of course, the one that got me super mad because Prepla got robbed. I mean, he was probably going to finish Dober in round 3. Even if he didn't finish Dober, Dober was not in any situation to win a round 3. So at absolute worst case scenario, Prepla was going to win a 29-28 if Dober didn't intentionally kick him in the groin and buy 5 minutes to recover. So yeah, that made me develop a very strong hatred for Dober. Prepla followed my page. I will try to help him as much as I can in his next fight. Hopefully he gets a next fight in the UFC because I feel very bad for him. And I will actively make sure that Dober loses every single fight from now on. Nelson versus Frevola. So Nelson actually did look better going up a weight class. So good for him. He definitely, I think, found like a second wind in his career, and this change is going to be good for him. He looked a lot faster than Frevola, was just in general cleaner, didn't have a lot of the issues he had at 145, which is not having power in anything he threw, and just being too much of a shell when people approached. So good on Nelson, good performance. I still think he may struggle with a lot of lightweight, but he'll definitely get into the rankings here, in my opinion. Jourdain versus Davy Grant was pretty much exactly as I expected because, yeah, I mean, Davy Grant's just too old and too predictable. Jourdain was able to time him ducking when he came in, find the flying knee, get the guillotine. Guillotine was very interesting. I want to rewatch how he did that guillotine because it did not look like a standard guillotine. Jourdain has some interesting guillotine grips, so that might be something to study in the future. Right pick, but shocker of the night. I was not expecting Fiorot to knock out Jasmine. And if she did, I thought it would be like an accumulation knockout in round 3. But I guess Fiorot hits a lot harder than we thought, or Jasmine just has no chin. I genuinely don't know which it is, but good on Fiorot, just stayed a lot cleaner, hit her clean the first time that it was available, and finished the fight. People are saying it was an early stoppage. I mean, like, Jasmine, she may have been able to recover, but it was not a good visual for the ref. Like, when you do the chicken dance, then you fall, and then you're eating ground and pound, it's just, the ref's going to stop it. Zahabi versus Cheeto went pretty much exactly how you would expect Zahabi versus Cheeto to go. Zahabi fought tactically, made sure to like use bursts at the end of rounds to try to secure them, just had the higher volume. Cheeto was of course capable of winning and just didn't because who knows what. That's how every Cheeto fight's going to play out. He's just going to get out volume to be mad he didn't win a decision when he just didn't do quite enough, and cycle repeats. I think Cheeto needs to be given a massive step down, and I think if he loses that, he should probably be cut, because even though he has a fan base, I think he's really boring to watch, because he just did not do anything in like any of these fights. Like, the only fight he did anything was against Munoz. So I'm not a Cheeto fan, to say the least, because of his fight style, and yeah, it's just every Cheeto fight you know is going to be kind of dull. Mike Malott versus Kevin Holland. Same issue as the Dober fight, right? Like, Malott is losing, decides he's just going to groin kick, and then we go from there. Now, I know what people are saying with the second groin kick. Was it a clean groin kick? Was it not? We're not going to know. I think what probably happened is it grazed, and because Holland had already gotten hit in the groin, we saw a much more dramatic reaction, because the second and the third is always much worse than the first one, even if they're nowhere near as clean. So I don't think Holland was acting. I know a lot of people are saying Holland was acting. I don't believe that. And even with Holland being heavily compromised, Malott very, very barely won. Like, even if you look at the significant strikes, like, Malott got doubled in round 3 pretty much. So I don't think Malott has a future in this weight class, and honestly, it's probably bad for him that he lost the fight, because he's going to get butchered in his next fight. Sorry, bad for him that he won the fight, because he's going to get butchered in his next fight. Kevin Holland, I still think, is in the same space where he's good, but inconsistent. Main event went pretty much exactly as I thought. I thought that Allen would do more on the feet, so I shouldn't say exactly, I guess. But I did know that Allen just better. Like, RDR has very good grappling, but he can only use it for a limited amount of time, and he's always super prone to falling off the top. This is something that's happened in a lot of his fights, and if it happens a few times, he just doesn't have any gas left. I don't think the RDR will be going any further, and I think he will probably lose his next fight and then probably retire. So let's see. Ilya versus Ryan Garcia, boxing. Boxing, probably Ryan Garcia takes it. Boxing with MMA gloves, Ilya would win. Did someone already ask Aspinall versus Ngannou, current Ngannou versus current Aspinall, and how? I would say Aspinall because Ngannou's too reliant on his chin. Oliveira dropping Gaethje, that was so shocking. No one's done Gaethje like that. Yeah, exactly. Early predictions for Ziam versus Salkilld. I think Ziam's too clean. I'm going to say Ziam wins a decision. Biggest reason you hate Umar? Just because he's a crybaby. He's just so annoying. It's a pro sport. You're going to find gambling corruption 100% of the time. We've seen Kraus as an appetizer ballot. Smallest fighter you think can beat Ilya? I think that very few people are set up to beat Ilya right now. So that's the problem. But if we're talking about like higher weight classes, I think again Khamzat's a pretty bad matchup for him probably. Pull it up on the UFC website. Oh, I mean, too late, but you didn't really need to see anything anyway. There's not too much here. Brother, I had a parlay bet against Azamat and on Prepelec to win, and then Dober kicks him in the balls. Yeah, that's rough. That would have been a crazy payout. What would be your reaction if gone 50-43 to Aspinall? As long as he gets like knockdowns and stuff to do that, I'd be fine with it. It's just, I mean, I'd be a little annoyed. I lose my bets on it, but like that is what it is. Yeah, so if Gane actually like is entertaining about it, then fine, so be it. I don't rate Ilya's wins highly outside of Max, who has easily had the most success against him. He's still pound for pound number one. I mean, the win against Max, though, was impressive. And then the Volkanovski one, I still think aged well, seeing how Volkanovski still beat Lopez. And the Oliveira one, again, no one's beaten Oliveira that easily. Did this card piss you off? Yes, it did. Is Aspinall the most dangerous man to live? Lucas thinks so. No, definitely not. Dober 100% lost to Prepelec. I had money on Kyle too. Yeah, that's unfortunate. Dober has invoked the wrath of Oracle. We will give him Taporia soon. Valid. Hero honestly looked like she caught the perfect shot. Don't really think it was power or chin. It's possible. Yeah, maybe it was just like, okay, Jasmine was moving into the shot and it was somewhat powerful and so on. Hero versus Natalia Silva. I'd probably mildly lean Furo because I think she just has a bigger kit. Do you think Prime Usman KOs Khabib? By the way, who wins JDM or Khabib? And DDP or Ilya at 185? Prime Usman probably beats Khabib by decision. I don't think he knocks him out. Who wins JDM or Khabib? That's a tough one to call. I really don't know. DDP or Ilya at 185? That's a tough one, but I'm probably going to lean Ilya because I think DDP still does have openings. Dude, you're asking for everyone to be cut. This ain't heavyweight, my guy. You can't just cut Cheeto and Rakic. I think that there are a lot of deserving fighters to be in the UFC, so I think they need to cut more aggressively, because I would rather see more fighters get into the UFC, and we see what they're actually capable of, than like fighters on 4-fight losing streaks stay in the UFC. Cheeto is buns, though. Yeah, exactly. Big Dan is very dumb, threatened to DQ Holland if he couldn't continue his the crunch shot. I think he meant that you're going to lose by TKO, because that's what would actually happen, but he just said the wrong thing. And his attitude and excuses are infuriating. He always makes up random stuff like the Figgy axe kick was illegal and that it should have been a take pointed off. Yeah, Cheeto is another one of those fighters who I feel like just tries to cry about everything. RDR did go on a good run for the time being. I think it's his limit, though. But yeah, he did have like 4 wins in a year solid. Ilya versus Crawford boxing with MMA gloves. I'll take Ilya then. Ilya versus Rodtang in kickboxing 4-ounce gloves. I'd lean Ilya. By the way, do you still think that Oliveira is a harder hitter than Ilya? Yes. Because again, Oliveira drops people, without loading up or anything. Ilya throws the full power overhand, and his accuracy is spectacular. His footwork is spectacular. But again, he's using his full body weight. So when you do that, you can knock people out, even if you don't have the same natural power. I think Allen can sub Izzy in round 2, or like a TKO against the fence. Very possible. I could definitely see a submission. How would you see Lopez versus Ilya going? I think the footwork difference would be so massive that Ilya would probably have an easy time. And there's a point at which I thought Lopez would win, but seeing the footwork discrepancy now, I think Ilya would. I think Dober should fight Torres. The first one was so close. I totally don't want to see a body valid. Yeah, that would be a good fight. How are you going to ruin the rest of Dober's career? I'm just going to coach any opponent that he has. And I'm also going to identify lightweights who I think have the potential to beat him and are unranked, help them game plan for him, and then have them call him out. I swear, did you not say Islam beats Ilya a month ago? No, I have not thought that pretty much ever, I don't think. Not in a long time, at least. I've had Ilya pretty confidently against Islam for a while. Do you see a finish in Gary versus Bilal, like Gary said? Okay, so the very interesting thing about that fight is that Gary asked for 3 rounds for a reason. Now, Gary has solid cardio, so I think what that means is that Gary wants a fallback in case he goes crazy and can't find a finish. So I do think we're going to see Gary extremely aggressively looking for a finish and just wants like, okay, it's only 3 rounds, so if I gas myself out and I can only win 2 rounds after using all my energy, it's okay. Ilya or Sean Brady? I think Ilya has a solid chance, but it's a close one. Ilya versus Volkov. That could be a tough one for Ilya just because he would have to rely on the body strikes. So I'd say it's closer for sure. Do you think Ilya would have success if he wasn't powerful? I don't think Ilya's as quote-unquote powerful as people think. I think he's just mastered like biomechanics. Rodtang has Vittoria invincibility with actual talent. Valid. Do you think anyone beats Ilya at 45, 55, 70? Let's see. 45, no. I think his hardest opponent would have been Arnold Allen. But no. 55... probably not. 70... probably not. Yeah, I'd lean towards no. Like, at 70, Jack has the best chance to beat him. Brady has, probably after that, the best chance. But I'd still mildly lean Ilya in both. Do you think Poatan is the hardest hitter of all time? He has a lot of knockouts without loading up. I think that it's more so his accuracy that does it, but he is also one of the hardest hitters for sure. I don't think he's like the literal hardest hitter. I think he hits it very hard and has great accuracy. What do you think was the downfall of Urseg? I thought Urseg won 4 rounds against Pantoja, but got shut out pretty easily by Wash Moreno. There's a stylistic thing, tape thing, confidence thing, etc. So I think 2 things happened against Pantoja. One, it was a really bad stylistic matchup for Pantoja, where Urseg has pretty good anti-grappling. His offensive grappling itself isn't spectacular, and his striking itself isn't spectacular, but he has good enough anti-grappling and just a slight edge in Pantoja with technical striking to the points that it was a weird matchup for Pantoja. On top of that, I think Pantoja had a really bad off night. And I think that combined made Urseg look a lot better than he is. And then when he fought people who are better pure strikers and such, his defense and lack of head movement just didn't hold up at all. Who do you think wins, Topuria or Talbot? I might lean Alexandre there just because Talbot just eats strikes without trying to defend. Ilya versus Darkseid? I might have to pick Darkseid there. Ilya versus John Silva. I think Silva is capable of beating Ilya. I just don't know if he would right now. Is there a world where Ian asking for 3 rounds against Gary backfires? I don't think it's likely. You never know. Gary or Brady? I'm leaning I'm leaning Brady, rather. Who's next on the Oracle chopping block for the MMA god Thirst for Blood? I will have to review who's done a lot of fouls. I was thinking about Tagir. There's a few other people who have like gotten away with a lot more fouls than people think about. Bro, this is so evil what you're doing to Dober. I'd almost feel bad for him if he didn't ruin my payout ballot. Did Nick Klein get cut? I think he has another fight. I don't remember who it was against, but I feel like I saw him get a fight announced. Jack jabs Ilya's nose off. I don't think Jack has a consistent enough jab for that, but Jack definitely has a chance in that fight, not saying he doesn't. Arnold Allen mentioned, let's go, valid. Shocked you didn't say John for 145. I think John definitely has a chance. I just don't think I would pick him right now, but by a small margin. Dante Johnson, the Dynamite's Contender Series heavyweight short guy, got booked against Cedricus Dumas at 185. Who do you favor and how? Okay, I really, really hate to say this. I think Dumas probably wins a decision. Johnson is okay for heavyweight. He's not okay for middleweight. Why does Ellen have a chance? He has very good movement. Moreno versus Tyra in-depth prediction. So, my reel kind of went into depth on this, but Moreno just has too many habits that lead into Tyra's strong suit, where Moreno's already had problems with the whole like body lock, then turn the corner to the back style takedowns. And Moreno also, like, in recent times, has just been loading up on a lot of hooks and overhands. He doesn't really have like the technical jab and like 1-2 that he used to. So I think he's going to end up giving Tyra the takedowns. And even on the feet, I feel like Tyra's going to play it more technical. Like he's just going to throw the cross, the calf kick, stuff like that. And I could see Moreno probably just losing a decision or even getting subbed. Do you see Sean Brady as champion? I don't see him beating JDM, but it is possible. I just don't understand what goes on in Vera's head when he fights. It's like, what is he waiting for? He waits for a gift in every performance. No idea how he got to the UFC, and now no idea how he stays. Yeah, it's very strange. Imavov should be next. The reason why I'm not as angry at Imavov, even though he might be on the list eventually, is I do definitely think Imavovs are very unintentional. So even though it is partially because of the whole like style that he has, I don't think it's like as intentional as say Tagir grabbing the fence or Dober with the groin kick or stuff like that. Ilya or Ankalaev? Ilya, but I also just don't like Ankalaev. Sacrifice a goat in the name of Dober's next opponent and watch him get knocked out. Valid. Why do you think Lopez beat Silva? Mainly because Silva just got way too overconfident and overextended. Best head movement tip. I mean, one thing to remember about head movement is a lot of people try to move their head when their opponent is throwing. Head movement is all about anticipation. You have to be thinking about what your opponent's going to be doing in 2 to 3 seconds, not what they're doing now. Yes, can you use indications they're going to throw, like their hip turning or like their shoulder moving, something like that, yes. But you want to understand their patterns if you're going to be able to have effective head movement. Ilya versus Prime Mike Tyson kickboxing. Okay, that's an interesting one because Tyson might be able to just blitz him, but if he can't, Ilya's just going to calf kick him to death. So I'd probably just barely lean Tyson, but like I'm not confident. Tukos versus Ibo Aslan. Oh god. I'd probably have to mildly pick Ibo. Ilya versus Galactus. I think Galactus might have a slight edge there. Aspinall versus Faber and Howe. Aspinall versus Krokop and Howe. Aspinall wins both easily in round 1. I think he'd probably sub Krokop just in case, and he'd knock out Fader. Did you pick Azamat Maksum? Yes, I did. What about Tyra versus Pantoja? Very interesting matchup. Yeah, that one is tougher in my opinion. I really don't know. I might very narrowly lean Tyra. What makes Pantoja's blitz so effective? Is it the power threat or the combos with the endless trip attempts? So it's the fact that 1, he can hurt you. Like Pantoja has underrated power in his hands. 2, you can't hurt him. And 3, he's just going to use it to set up the takedown. So you have 3 things you have to worry about, and it's hard to deal with all 3 of them. CLD versus Tulio got booked. How do you favor and how? Who do you favor and how? Right now, I'm mildly leaning Tulio, but I'll have to look at the tape. Ilya or MVP? Definitely Ilya there. Ilya can just take him down and sub him. Mokaev versus Pantoja, who wins? Pantoja would destroy Mokaev. Mokaev is not nearly as good as some people think. Are you happy to see Turner coming back, and are you going to pick him against Barboza? I will pick him against Barboza. Am I happy to see him coming back? I honestly don't care either way. Like good for him if he's gotten his head in place, but I'm not like a particular fan or hater of him. I missed the entire stream. I wish my classes ended an hour later. Yeah, that sucks, but you could always watch back if you want to, or just look at like a summary or something. Are you just going to pick Ilya versus every fighter? Not every. I did say Hamzat's a very bad matchup for him, but his footwork is hard to pick against. Why do you think Gane has gotten so much bigger? I assume he's trying to increase his power, but the problem is not like his muscle mass. The problem is his biomechanics. What impressed me the most about Ilya is that he's accomplished so much with so little, essentially a 3-2, a low kick. It reminds me of Sean at middleweight. Don't know if that's good or bad. Yeah, I agree with you there. How do you see Gaethje versus Ilya playing out? I think Ilya knocks him out in 2 minutes. Alex or Imavov, and Sean Strickland or Ilya. I'm going to say Alex beats Imavov. I might lean Strickland against Topuria, because I think Strickland can stay safe enough. But I'm not confident. Ilya versus a Minotaur from ancient Greece. Minotaur might be a little bit difficult to knock out. Ilya versus Mackenzie Dern. Dern's going to need a lot better of a chin than she's displayed, even though she has a good one. I have a chance there. Could you update me about the Dober situation? I don't know what you're talking about. So Dober, if you didn't see the fight, Dober was essentially going to get finished, or at the least like lose a 29-28 decision. He was like gassed out and beaten up, and then he decided to intentionally kick Prepolak in the groin as hard as he can to buy 5 minutes to recover, and then was able to win after that because Prepolak continued while being compromised to say the least, and Dober got 5 minutes to rest and recover. Fun fact, Krokop's old boxing coach is now Aspinall's coach. Interesting. Gaziev versus Kuniev. Gaziev. Gaethje's recklessness and leg kicks can hurt Ilya really badly. But the problem is you said recklessness in that term, and when you're too reckless against Ilya, you're going to get knocked out. Could Tyra run the flyweight gauntlet? It's very possible. The only real questions for him are Van and Pantoja. If he can beat those two, he'll beat everyone else easily. Ilya versus Imavov. It's a tough one to say. I might pick Imavov, but his defense isn't as good as, say, like Strickland, so I could see him getting caught. Most of the transformation in Gane was him flexing and spreading his lats. Fair. I know blitzing has become a unique skill, specifically in MMA, but it's such an amateur technique that has been turned into something that, along with good attributes, can expose bad fighters. Fair. When are you going to fight Companion? When the Paramount thing comes through, I'll probably start doing fight companions. Almeida versus DC. I'd probably pick DC because I don't think Almeida would be able to take him down. And then I think that he would probably just get knocked out on the feet. The thing that scares me about Barab is he can genuinely get 2 defenses against 2 top 5 opponents on the same night. That is true. Very true. Do you see anyone except Hamzat being able to beat Pereira? Not anymore, I don't think. I think Ilya beats everyone pound for pound. Very possible. Do you think RDR does well at 205 or heavyweight? Who do you think he beats? And do you think he beats? And who do you think beats him in each of those 2 divisions? I mean, RDR could try heavyweight as he ages. It wouldn't be a terrible thing. The problem is like his defense is so bad, and we're dealing with heavyweight power. Even though they're less technical, I could see him getting slapped. Granted, like, yeah, as soon as he got the fight to the ground against the heavyweight, it would instantly be over because the heavyweight's not surviving there. But his striking defense is just not what you'd want to see. Betting odds on Ilya losing any fight for the rest of his career, minus 1500 that he won't. I'd say like minus 150 that he won't, especially because I think he'll retire quickly. But if he fights like 3 more times, there's definitely a chance he loses. Not gonna lie, this might be a hot take, but I low-key think Chimaev can beat Pereira if he gets bigger as expected. It's very possible. The problem is if he stands at all, he's gonna get chinned. But it's 100% possible that he gets it to the ground and finishes it quickly. Ilya cheated on his wife and his wife left him. Isn't that not confirmed, though? I mean, I know that they probably are, like, not together or something weird is happening there, but I don't think it's, like, confirmed that he cheated on his wife or anything, so I don't want to be saying that. Would Sean low-key still be the middleweight champion if DDP didn't exist? He literally has a good chance to beat everyone. Even at welterweight, just at light heavyweight, he would have issues. The biggest problem would be Chimaev for sure, but he has a chance against Chimaev. His scrambling is underrated. I'd lean Chimaev, but I wouldn't be shocked if Strickland pulls it off. Explain in detail what exactly makes you think Ilya is a god. I definitely don't think he's a god, otherwise they wouldn't have so much content criticizing him. But in terms of what I think makes him so good, is the fact that he's pairing a lot of simplicity with his techniques. Again, he's only focusing on an overhand and a lead hook, and I guess you could say a calf kick as well for the most part. And then he's using very advanced footwork and cage cutting along with reads to make those weapons as effective as possible. So against Holloway, for example, he was able to knock out Holloway because he was able to read Holloway's tendency with circling movement. So that wasn't just like, oh, Ilya eventually caught Holloway and put him out. You could see him testing a few times to set up that sequence. So the first test was when he threw a double jab, I believe. It was not a double jab. He threw a jab left hook. Then he saw that Holloway basically squares after the jab and circles away from the hook. So then he was able to use that sequence. So he threw the jab, then feinted the left hook. Then as Holloway squares and moves to Ilya's right, Ilya basically cuts him off with the overhands as Holloway's moving into it. That's not a simple thing to do, and it's not a simple read to make, especially in the heat of the moment. So stuff like that, combined with his footwork, makes him very difficult to beat, even if I do think he has clear weaknesses. Ilya versus Aspinall. I mean, this is going to sound crazy, but I could see Ilya winning with, again, how open Aspinall is for the check hook. If Aspinall connects, yeah, it's obviously over. But if he misses once and Ilya counters with the lead hook, I could see him sleeping Aspinall. Do you think with Merab gaining more confidence on the feet, do you think that he will stab? Do you think that will stab him in the back against different opponents? I just don't think there's anyone right now who has like the one-shot knockout power to really make it an issue. What made you change your mind on Pereira? Like, why does he beat everyone now? Just asking. I mean, the only person in the past who I really thought was going to beat him was Yuri. Now that we've seen that Yuri's probably not going to beat him, I mean, I've never really thought anyone else in the division I've never thought anyone else in the division had the potential to beat him, except for the whole weird Ankalaev situation. But again, my whole thought from the beginning was that if Alex is not like old and washed, he does beat Ankalaev. Is Strickland a product of endless sparring, or does he have natural defensive talents? Both. I think he definitely has natural defensive talents, but it was definitely honed through the sparring. I read that Ilya's never thrown a high kick or body kick in his entire career. Yeah, I believe that is true. DDP or Khamzat? I mean, you have to lean Khamzat now, but I do think that DDP would have a chance. I think Roundtree, while dangerous early, is the most overrated fighter at light heavyweight. He's super one-dimensional offensively, and defensively, there's almost nothing he has. He's just too predictable. Yeah, I agree. Plus, in a 5-round fight, he's never going to win if it goes past round 2. How do you get good at cage cutting? You just have to understand how your opponent's going to move and how you can move so that you're not, first of all, crossing your feet, but you're making it so that they have to move into a single place. And then when you can force them to move into a single position with your strikes and your footwork, then you could put a strike where they're going to move and put them out. Do you think Islam is more overrated than Aspinall? No. Islam is good. I think there's people who could beat him, but I do think he's good. Do you think Josh Van has the takedown defense to make Pantoja fight competitive? He did very well against the Japanese wrestler Ray Tsuruya, but do you rate that as a good showcase? It's very hard to say. I actually don't think there's a way to really know until we see round 1. I think anyone who's confident in one of the fighters is just, like, what would be the word? Posturing, I should say. Because we don't know if Josh Van's takedown defense is good enough. If it is, he'll win. If it's not, he'll lose. Build a fighter to beat Ilya at lightweight. I mean, you need, like... In many ways, Max is a good style to beat Ilya, but Max would need to have more one-punch knockout power, better timing, and more of a tendency to try to, like, punish overextensions. He did it a little bit in the fight, but he didn't really sit down on it. Dracus versus Allen. I would favor Dracus. Ilya to me is like Tom in all respects. It's frustrating to watch though and be so predictable, yet no one has any ability to game plan or prepare properly and just lose by the most obvious way. Frustrating. Yeah, I get what you mean. Islam or Khabib? I'd say Khabib. It's funny because Arman has the tools to beat him but won't. I don't think he does just because his striking defense is questionable, but I do get what you mean. Do you think weight cutting is good for the sport? No, I do not. I do wish they actually had hydration testing. I know people don't love hydration testing, but I do think it's a good thing. Do you still hate Tom Aspinall? Will you still hate him after he's cleared out the division and has 9 defenses? First of all, I don't hate Tom Aspinall. I have nothing against him. There are fighters I dislike as people. I don't dislike Aspinall as a person. He seems fine. Do I think that his skill set is a little bit overrated? Yes. Do I think that he still probably clears out heavyweight today? Also, yes. So I don't think my opinion of him is going to change because I still expect him to have a lot of defenses. Maybe over the course of those defenses, we see an evolution of his skills, and that makes me change my mind. But if his skills don't evolve, then no. How would the Hamzat that fought DDP do against the same Gilbert Burns he had a scrap with? I think it would end up being the same outcome because the problem is Hamzat just didn't want to grapple with Burns. So I think even if because he shot early in both fights, and then once he got in a bit of danger with the armbar, he was like, okay, we're not doing this. I think we're going to see the return of Backpack Pantoja against Van. Good boxers have historically made him fight very boring. That's possible. Prime Khabib or Ilya. So that's a tough one for me because it really depends on if Ilya stuffs the first takedown or not. Khabib was a much better chain wrestler than Islam, which is why I'm confident Ilya beating Islam, but I'm not confident Ilya beating Khabib. If I had to pick, I would say Ilya, but I'm not as confident. I'm worried after watching Volk's breakdowns of fights that fighters only watch highlights of film study. If that's true, then I don't know. Yeah, I think it is unfortunately true. Like, fighters are really bad at game planning usually. I think in order to beat Ilya, you gotta have good kicks and good boxing. I mean, it will definitely help. I would say the boxing is more important because you really want to be able to counter his right hand. I feel like Pantoja is just slightly overrated right now because he has recent defenses like Azakura were big steps down in competition. I think his performance against Kai Kara France still shows that he's not overrated, but I do get what you mean. List some fighters you dislike as people and why. I mean, I dislike Umar, as I've said several times, because I think he's super whiny. I really dislike MVP. I think he's just a trash human being. Those are the only two I could think of off the top of my head. What's actually the most interesting division in the UFC right now, because champs feel too dominant to the point where it makes the division boring, knowing they can't go too far to beat champ. Yeah, that's a good point. I always like flyweight fights, so I would say it's the most entertaining in terms of the fights. But if we're talking about like the division mechanics, it might be featherweight right now because anyone could end up as champion. I think Van should prioritize bodywork versus Pantoja. Every fight he gets tired but catches a second wind. Van shouldn't give him the time. Yeah, I agree with that. Best and worst ref. Worst ref is probably, what's his name? Oh god, Mark Goddard. Best ref? See, it's tough. I might have to say Herzog, but Herzog definitely makes mistakes. I feel like the reason why it feels like Herzog is the best is because at least Herzog admits he makes mistakes. The others just like scream into the void that they're not making mistakes and defend it to the death. So I probably like Herzog the most, but I don't know like objectively who's the best ref. Do you know who MVP's dad is? Yes, I do. What's wrong with MVP? I mean, everything. I've hated him for a long time because, first of all, like can crushing and just taunting endlessly is just stupid. Like, it's actually ridiculous that, I don't know, I really hate that to begin with. Then, of course, there's the fact that he held on to, like, a leg lock late, past when the ref was trying to disengage it, which really pissed me off. Then there's the whole thing about how he cries about people aren't being respectful in MMA, and then taunts for, like, 14 out of 15 minutes of a fight. His fights are also all really boring. Like, unless he's fighting a Ken, he throws, like, 2 strikes per minute. So I just feel like there's nothing to like about MVP for me personally. I know everyone has their preferences. If you like him, I'm not going to say you can't. It's just, I do not. All right, I'm probably going to finish things here because I am starting to lose my voice, and more water is not going to keep fixing that. But I will say one more time, if you guys are betting and are not in the service yet, do consider doing so. It is in the description here. And of course, feel free to DM me on Instagram asking any questions. Thank you all for coming today. I hope you all enjoy the event. And if you guys are betting, good luck with that. Thank you all again, and have a good night, everyone. I'll see you guys soon.